What is going on, everybody out there in IB Nation? I'm Vince D'Addario. That guy is Brian Driscoll, and we're back for another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is the big show. It's the big show. It's Tuesday. It's a new month, and last time I checked, Brian, Notre Dame plays a football game this month.
Yeah,
so
man.
I'm pretty fired up about it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy that we're there right now. So, but
Yep. No doubt about it. And I will say that, there was an open practice this morning and we had a chance to see a few things. And if you're on the board, then you already have your first breakdown of kind of the things that we saw. We're not really going to get into that a whole lot in this show in particular. Sean and I are going to talk about that tonight in IB Nation Sports Talk. But again, if you're a member of the message board.irishbreakdown.com, then you're going to have a lot of that information already going into the show. So, make sure that you take a look because there's some good stuff in there. And Brandon's asking how open was it? It was the first 5 periods. We don't get another. Yeah,
we're only going to get one more of those
until next week. So actually, a week from today. So
and we've only got one. We've only got one more of those practices. So
yep, exactly. So. But today, we're going to kind of spin a little thing here, and it's August 1st. And August 1st is a big deal because it is the first time that any school, Notre Dame included, can officially contact, offer, all of those different things, right? The class of 25. And so we figured, well, it's the first day of August. Let's talk about the class of 25 because the class of 24, for the most part, pretty much has a bow on it. There's a couple of little things here and there that could transpire, at the very least, one more commitment that is going to be made either for Notre Dame or elsewhere with Gerby Lambert whenever that takes place. And there's a couple of flip opportunities, obviously, in the 24 class. But, we're going to kind of spin this thing forward and talk about the 25 class and everything that kind of goes along with the 25 class and what they're looking to do and where they stand. There's a couple commitments, obviously, already in the 25 class. And, what is that looking like? What is the staff looking to do? How is that going to go? And so we are having some technical difficulties here.
It's not letting me come in. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Did you have to add me?
I pushed the little layout button. I didn't have to add you.
Okay.
It was weird. I don't know why that would do that, but whatever. I put the 2-person layout and there you
wasn't letting me join the show for some crazy
It was weird. I could hear you clicking.
VD21 was trying to keep me off the show, y'all. I mean, can you believe that? He was trying to take all of it to himself. I can't believe you do that to me, VD21.
Oh, I love it. I love how I have a new nickname too, by the way, which is
hey, you gave it to yourself.
I know,
when you
was totally
inadvertent.
It was totally inadvertent. That's not what I meant to do, but whatever.
It is wild, Vince, when you look at 2025 recruiting, man. It's crazy how it's sped up. When I first started following recruiting, man, it's like you didn't really find out who you were going to get till like August. Till like December, and January, and February.
Because it was they would have the big banquet, and that was like the big recruiting weekend, and it was pretty much a sprint to the finish line of signing day, which was in February.
Yeah, and then I just would remember, I remember when like Brad Carrico committed to like before his senior year, and you're like, wow, that's really early. You know, and it's sped up now to where Notre Dame is basically already moving on to the rising junior class because they're pretty much almost done in the 2024 class outside of a couple guys. So it really is kind of wild how this whole thing has gone down, Vince. It is just it's been wild.
But, they've already got a couple commitments in the class of 25, and there could be they had just had the big grill and chill, which was primarily 25 kids, obviously, and Ryan and I talked yesterday about what a great event that was for Notre Dame, especially in comparison to other programs with lousy food. And so it was a great event. Yeah. A lot of guys came out of there with a lot of good things to say about Notre Dame, which is fantastic. And so Notre Dame is right in the thick of the 25 class, which is wild. It's absolutely, wild to me.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about today, Vince. Did you do the little tease while I was trying to figure out what was going on?
No, I did not give that.
We may have a visitor today. We may have a special guest on the show today.
We like special guests.
Yeah, we
They
do.
happen to stop by every now and again. It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. You
Yeah,
never know when the
we
doorbell's going
do.
to ring. Go
Yeah.
answer it. So we'll see
So
what
Vince,
happens.
when you look at the 2025 class, there's a lot of reasons why it's important that they're able to get an early start. Obviously, every year it's just better to get on kids early if you're
Oh,
Notre
yeah.
Dame, especially kids from out of your region.
Notre Dame's
It's
been
just
burned in the past by
right.
not getting on certain kids early enough, and they've
Right.
had to make up a lot of ground. Well, it's not really the case this time
Right.
around. Like they're in
Yeah,
early on a lot
it
of
really
kids.
hasn't since Marcus Freeman and Chad Bowden showed up, really. I mean, that's just been a thing. I mean, that first 22 class was impossible to get a head start because they
Sure.
didn't get hired till, January, basically,
Right.
when Marcus Freeman was hired as the defensive coordinator. And then, of course, he brought Chad Bowden with him, which was, a big deal for Notre Dame at the time. And it's paid off incredibly well for them so far from a recruiting standpoint. But, ever since he's been head coach, especially, they've really done a great job of getting a head start on these kids. So now they fast forward to 2025. The other part of it, too, is 2025 is an absolutely loaded class at a lot of positions. And so you've also got to take advantage of that. So what we're going to discuss today is kind of looking at the 25 class. Obviously, we'll just quickly start off with what's already in the class and then just kind of go over the needs. Now, we will talk about some individual players, but keep this in mind. They're rising juniors. There's probably a kid that's going to sign with Notre Dame that currently doesn't have an offer in the 25 class. It's just the way that it is, right?
Yep.
So when people get in like somebody asked me on the board the other day, Vince, they're like, who are the must-gets in the 25 class? And I was like, I don't really have a lot of must-gets right now because it's so early.
Sure.
It's like, I don't want to say
16, 15.
these 13, 15, 18 guys are must-gets because the reality is there's going to be some other kids that pop up. Plus, they're so deep at certain positions. It's like, well, if you don't get that guy, you can still get that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So I would just kind of encourage people to not get so wrapped up into the whole got to get this guy, got to get this guy, got to get this guy just yet. There's a lot of talented players out there, and Notre Dame is going to be in the mix for a lot of those guys. They just have to close.
Yep.
And so part of setting the tone for this conversation is also saying, okay, well, what are the priorities?
Sure.
And we're gonna figure all that out. So it's gonna be a fun ride, man. There's no doubt. And of course,
ride.
They got to finish up 24, but that list is pretty small. So we're ready to rock and roll, man. And I
start
think
on the offensive side.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got a commitment already from Nate Roberts, which is a big time commitment. You've got, in my opinion, the best tight end I've seen on film so far. There's a couple kids that have maybe higher ceilings, but I don't believe that they have higher ups, like they don't have higher floors. And right now they're not better players than what Nate Roberts is. I think he's a big time prospect, certainly a great way to kick off your offensive class. And when you look at what the needs are, Vince, it always starts at quarterback, no matter what you've signed in the past, right? I mean, that's kind of the foundation of a strong class is you've got to be able to go out and get a big time quarterback. And it's very interesting that Notre Dame is sort of established who that guy is for them so early. And of course, that's Deuce Knight from Mississippi, soon to be from Lipscomb Academy in Tennessee. He's going to be transferring.
Let me ask you this question. We've talked a lot about, every time I've talked with Ryan on the recruiting show, he talks about Notre Dame hasn't gotten a Mississippi kid since the mid '90s. And
well, that's it. I believe it's a quarter. He spoke incorrectly. He I think he meant quarterback.
Okay,
since the '90s, because they got Caleb Alford in 2020.
Gotcha.
From Mississippi.
Okay.
And he just left out, I believe, the quarterback part.
Gotcha. So, But does this mean if they end up getting Deuce Knight, is he's still a Mississippi kid? Okay. All right. I just want to clarify.
To me, it's like a kid that's an IMG.
IMG. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, he goes to a private school that's for football in Florida, but he's still Robert Hainsey wasn't a Florida kid.
Right.
He's a Pittsburgh kid that just went to IMG.
Right.
So yeah, I still count him as a Mississippi kid. That's up for debate. But like Deuce Knight's a big one, and I know people on the board last night were kind of, oh my gosh, did you see this, that, and the other thing that was done today? Look, Ryan put something on the board right after Deuce's visit that Notre Dame did a tremendous job and made themselves the team to beat now for him. We're going to see how this one plays out. Look, if Deuce Knight tomorrow said, hey, I'm committing Notre Dame, this baby's not over. Right. If he said tomorrow he's committing to Tennessee, this baby's not over. Right. I mean, he is an elite quarterback that people are going to want. He's also an outstanding student. He's a great kid. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people like Deuce Knight. So Notre Dame is in a very strong position. It's you just got to close it out. And obviously, as I know Ryan talked about this yesterday, Gino Guidugli's done a great job on that recruitment. But I mean, that's the thing. There is if you can get part of the reason I think they're focusing on Deuce now is because number one, the quarterbacks in this class are so talented that you kind of have to declare who's your guy.
Sure.
You can't just keep trying to recruit him and George McIntyre and KJ Lacey and Bryce Underwood and this guy and this guy and this guy and Antoine Hill, and then just hope who likes you best. They had to find the guy that was that they liked of that top guys and say who do we like, but who's the best fit for us. And Notre Dame staff decided early that was Deuce Knight. So yes, he's an elite talent like the other players, but he's the guy that's the best fit. And then the other reason you push hard for him is because if you can kick your class off with an elite quarterback, it can work wonders. Exhibit A, 2024 with CJ Carr.
CJ Carr, absolutely.
I mean, having CJ in this class has been huge for Notre Dame. It's why you've got a great run. It's not why. It's part of the reason why you have a great running back class, an outstanding receiver class, and a pretty darn good tight end in the class, despite the fact Notre Dame's offense last year was mediocre at best. But hey, it's not going to be mediocre when he gets there, right? And that's kind of the way that top players view top quarterbacks. And so Deuce is certainly that type of player and can be that type of kick the class off type of guy for Notre Dame. And that's why they're focusing on him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And CJ Carr also made himself very available coming on campus when big time recruits were here. So the location of his hometown was obviously very beneficial to Notre Dame as well. Right. But he was one of the lead recruiters, right? I mean, and not just being in person, but all of the above. And that's what having an elite quarterback can do for you, especially when they're one of the first ones in the class.
Right.
And if they can nail down Deuce Knight, it'd be a very similar situation. From what I can gather by talking to Ryan, I mean, his personality and everything meshes with the fact that he would probably do the same thing. And elite quarterbacks, for the most part, that's why they get into the class early, because they don't want to be a part of a class that isn't an elite class. They want to build this thing up, and they know that having an elite quarterback is what springboards the whole thing. So these guys aren't foolish. They know what's up. They know what the timeline is, all of those things. And that's kind of where this thing's playing out right now.
Right. And of course, if you get a big time quarterback, you have a shot at getting a big time receiver class. Absolutely. And that's kind of where we'll move to next, obviously, with this whole situation. When you look at Notre Dame, very talented group of pass catchers on the board so far. Receiver, from what I can tell so far, Ryan, Vince, it's a good receiver class. It hasn't quite shown me that it's as deep as maybe some recent classes, because receiver's been kind of a loaded position for several years. I like the top so far. There's some depth that I need to establish, and some of the guys at the top aren't necessarily like the same level of some guys that I've seen in recent years, but there's still some really good players. And then one of the elite players, in my opinion, two of the elite players so far in the class, Ryan Williams and Jamie French, have already committed to Alabama. So that's two guys off the board. Jamie French visited Notre Dame a couple times. There's some other really talented players on the board. I expect it to expand a little bit. Obviously, you've got Taylor Taylor. When you do ask me about muskets, Vince, it starts right there. Like, I don't have a very long list of musket guys. I think I provided 4 the other day in the message board post that asked me about that. I'd probably add a couple more now that I've thought about it, including Deuce Knight. But Taylor Taylor's one because he's an elite receiver and he's in your backyard. He's a high academic kid. He literally checks all the boxes that you're looking for in a big-time player, and you can't lose a guy like that in your backyard. It's going to be a dogfight. Ohio State's going to be in it. Michigan's going to be in it. All the top programs are going to be in it.
Yeah,
that's one that you're going to have to win, and it's a long way from being over, right? Long way from being over. But you've got other guys on the board. Dalen McCutcheon from Texas has been on campus. Derek Meadows from Nevada. He's a very intriguing player, Vince. He's 6'5". He ran a 4.5 flat at Notre Dame's camp this summer. 4.5 flat electronically. But he needs to work on his hands, and he's very raw. But you just can't teach the 6'5", jump out of a gym running a 4.5. I mean, you just can't. And so he's another very intriguing player on the board. There's a lot of guys like that so far, Vince, that are like those maybe toolsy, not so much
Sure.
polished right now. Like I know a lot of people love like Caden Cunningham, who's a really good player. Or is it Caleb Cunningham? Excuse me, Caden Cunningham. Cade Cunningham's a basketball player. Caleb Cunningham is like 6'5", kind of fast, but he's really raw, but just a lot of tools. He's not an elite player yet, but he's got elite tools.
And these guys are just finishing their sophomore year, though.
Right.
So like there's a lot of time to develop.
That's the challenge of recruiting sophomores. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Because you're basically recruiting tools right now, and there might be a unicorn out there that is really polished in their route running and all of that coming out of their sophomore year. But I would say that's not the rule. You know what I mean? That's more the exception than the rule. And so you kind of got to get on guys that have the tools, and you got to see where that goes. And that's why they have to get involved with all of these guys so early, because you just never know when those tools are going to develop and going to start polishing and all of that. And if that doesn't happen, you know what I mean? And so it's going to be interesting to see how these guys develop.
And when you look at the needs for the receiver class, I think another minimum 3-man class is needed, in my opinion. And you could potentially get to 4 if it's the right players, Vince. I do think that, obviously 1 quarterback is the need. 3 receivers minimum is the need. There's some intriguing players on there. Obviously, Cooper Perry from Arizona. We've talked about Taylor. Quincy Porter's another one that I've got my eye on. A kid from Bergen Catholic in New Jersey who's 6'4", fast. Another very talented player to look at. So there's certain Jerome Bettis Jr. is on the board. I'm very curious to see his junior season film. See what kind of jump he makes. I know he's had a growth spurt this offseason, and there's a lot of people saying he's a lot more athletic now. I just need to see it on film, right? But a lot of tools there. And tight end's another one that's a really strong class. You've already got a good one. Now Notre Dame has to decide, do we want a second one? I believe that they do. Obviously, James Flanagan was on campus this weekend. He did a great job there.
James Flanagan, I feel like they want a number 2.
But the question would be is, do they want a number 2 because it's a former player's kid, or because you want a number 2? And I think that question was answered when Carter Nelson, like that question was made somewhat moot when Carter Nelson picked Nebraska, because I think you weren't going to take 2 in back-to-back years.
Okay.
So the question was, do you take 2 in 24 and then 1 in 25? Where do you at? Well, once you missed on Carter Nelson, I think it made it easier to bring in 2 numbers wise. And then now it's no longer about, well, that's an alum's kid. Now it's just about, we now want and need a second tight end. So I think that's kind of answered itself here recently.
Makes sense.
And James Flanagan being that guy who's a top 150 caliber player already. There's some other guys on the board that like Notre Dame a lot that I think they've kind of said, hey, we like other guys better. Offensive line is another interesting one, Vince, because part of this is going to be dependent on, do you close with Gilby Lambert or not? I mean, we think that they're going to close with Gilby Lambert, but at the end of the day, he hasn't made a decision yet. And until he makes a decision, it's still let's find out.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's going to be an interesting piece of it. And then also what type. We're going to learn a lot about what type of offensive lineman Joe Rudolph is going after. Because right now, when you look at the board, outside of Josh Petty, there's a couple guys you can make that case for. It's an interesting group. There's some big, massive maulers, and then there's some athletic kids that are on it too. And so which ones does he prefer, or does he like a blend of it? That's going to be an interesting part too. The good news is they're already in great shape with some very talented 25 offensive linemen. Obviously, Owen Strebig, big-time player. I know Ryan broke him down yesterday. Rowan Byrne from New York. You've got Matty Augustine. They're in a good position with Avery Gack. They've done well there. I really hope they're able to get Josh Petty on campus. I really like that kid a lot. He's a very talented player from Georgia. But do you go to 4? Do you go to 5?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be determined by what Gilby Lambert does. I'm not saying, I know when you ever say something like that, people think, oh my gosh, are you now worried about Gilby? No, I'm not. But so far he hasn't committed yet. And until he does, we have to talk like he hasn't.
Right. Exactly.
And so far he hasn't committed. So if he does commit, I think you're at a nice 4 per year, occasionally 5 if there's some departures, and kind of go from there. So I think the needs there is a little bit still of a work in progress. But I'll say this, Vince, they need to make sure, the biggest need they have is they need 1 more year of really making sure you've taken care of tackle. Even if you get Gilby Lambert, you need 1 more year to make sure you better get at least 2 guys that can flat out play tackle at the next level. Now, That doesn't mean a guy can't play guard, can't move to guard, right? But he has to be able to play tackle. Quentin
Right.
Nelson could have been a very good right tackle in college football.
Sure.
Very good right tackle. And so you get a kid like that, you've met your tackle need, and then if other guys step up and emerge and guard's the fastest place to get them on the field, then you move them into guard. But they've got to be able to play tackle. That's going to be the big thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Zach Martin played a pretty darn good tackle at Notre Dame, and then obviously at the next level, he's inside. You know what I mean? So I mean, you just have to have. I personally like the way that Harry Hiestand did things, and he would recruit a bunch of tackles who had the ability to play inside. You know what I mean? It's not easier. That's not the word I'm looking for, but going from tackle to guard is a better transition generally than going, okay, well, we're recruiting him as a guard. Now we need him at tackle. Like that's not usually the way that it goes. You know what I mean? And now granted, there are plenty of guys out there that would not do well inside that are tackle only. I get that. But I do like the strategy of bringing in tackle abilities, tackle bodies, and then moving them around as you need. We'll see if Joe Rudolph does that, if what it's going to look like, because this is his first real recruiting class at Notre Dame. I mean, he came in the middle of 24. It was pretty much already a done deal for the most part by the time he got in. And,
Right.
now this is the first class that he's, really had his hands on.
Getting on the ground floor, right, Vince?
Exactly.
I mean, like
yes.
The foundation was kind of already
Right.
laid last year, and not just with Harry Hiestand, but with others. I mean, O-line is you've followed this a long time, Vince. O-line is one of those positions where the relationship is so important to kids.
Yes.
And it's long building and all those type of things. And, when you're in a situation where you guys have kind of already decided, they've already built their relationships and established those things, it can be a little harder to close on those. And so far, he's done a nice job. I mean, got Styles Prescott in the class. Obviously, Anthony Knapp's a kid that he had already established a relationship with at Virginia Tech.
Sure.
Which helped him kind of get that one. Now you've got to show that you can get that done with Gilbert Lambert, and that's going to be the key.
Yep.
And so to me, Vince, when I look at the offensive line, it's one of those things where I've got to see Joe Rudolph really show that he can consistently recruit at a high level. It's not that I don't think that he can. It's just one of those things where until a guy does it, Vince, it's got to be a question mark. I mean, it was a question mark that Chancey Stuckey could recruit at Notre Dame at a high level, because we hadn't seen him do it anywhere, much less at Notre Dame. We had to see that Dylan McCullough could recruit at Notre Dame the way he did it at Indiana or USC. It's a different animal.
Absolutely.
And you can believe that a guy can do it, but it's one thing to believe it, and it's another thing to say, okay, now he's proven it. Right. And that's the thing that we're waiting to see with Coach Rudolph is, okay, we know you were able to recruit at a relatively high level at Wisconsin, especially for being at Wisconsin. Can you do that in Notre Dame? And then also, what kind of evaluations does he make? That's another interesting thing is what does he prioritize? I may look at film and say, man, I love this guy. I prioritize that guy. But then he's like, that's not really my kind of guy.
Right.
We're still learning that. I could, for the most part, get a sense of whether or not Harry Hiestand was going to like a kid, either by his personality or by the style of play and the body type and things like that. Like, Coach Hiestand liked guys that were just blue collar, right? Just show up and do your job.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what made the Parker Boudreaux recruitment so funny. And anyone that knows that recruitment knows that was a lot more about Brian Kelly than it was about Harry Hiestand's desire to have Parker Boudreaux at Notre Dame.
Well, he didn't stick around very long.
So. No, he didn't. It's not surprising. But he likes those blue collar guys. And, we're going to find out what the likes are for Coach Rudolph. Thank you. So that's just something that we're going to learn about him as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the intriguing part of college coaches coming, going and doing those things and what it looks like when they inherit kids and have to go recruit their own kids and, recruiting. And you've been a recruiting coordinator before, Brian, and, you put your personality into the kids you're recruiting. I mean, that's just human nature. You know what I mean? And you're going to want to recruit kids that are going to fit what you want to do, personality wise, play style wise, like all of it. And that's why the longer a guy's on staff and the longer you get to see kind of what he picks and chooses and what his likes and dislikes are, the more you kind of get to know a little bit more about that coach too. You know what I mean? And what he values, right? It's like we said, when we're watching a guy coach, what are the first things out of his mouth? That's what he really truly values. Okay. What kind of kids are they recruiting? that's the kind of kid that they value. And, we get to see that a little bit more as time progresses. And we're going to see a lot of that with this class with Joe Rudolph, because this is the first class that he's had his hands on from the beginning. So it's going to be fun.
Let's talk offense as a whole, Vince.
Okay.
And we talked about the needs, right? So you need a quarterback, you need a running back, you need minimum 3 receivers, you need 2 tight ends, I think, and then 4 offensive linemen. Beyond that, here's why this offensive class is important in 25. We talked about how loaded it is. And what's really funny and ironic is that since Marcus Freeman arrived, the position that has been the most impactful, I would argue, I would say this, and some people might disagree with me, but I would say this. I believe that Notre Dame has actually recruited offensively better than defensively since Marcus Freeman has been hired as the head coach.
As a whole, yes.
Because if you think about some of the guys that Notre Dame landed in that 22 class and even the 23 class, Drake Bowen was committed to Notre Dame before Marcus Freeman became the head coach. Brendan Vernon was committed before Marcus Freeman became the head coach. There were some guys in the class that were already on board when Marcus Freeman was hired. So you don't really count those as guys that signed with him as the head coach. Now, if you want to talk about since he's been here, period, it's about even. But the reality is the offensive recruiting in the past was often at times better than the defense. But there was always, it seemed every year, there just were holes. The thing that has impressed me about the 23 and 24 recruiting on the offensive side of the ball is that so far they have just not missed from a number standpoint. There's some positions that, would like to have had this guy over this guy or, that guy over the other guy. And you can always have those conversations, Vince. But when you look at it, it was one of those things where it wasn't a situation where you didn't get a good football player. Like we could look at last year's receiver class and say, some people might have preferred this guy over that guy. That's fine. Sure. That's fair. Those are totally fair conversations to have. But even then, we're looking at it and saying, this was an outstanding receiver class. Yes, I would have liked to have had Cardinal Tate in it. Sure. Yeah. Cardinal Tate's a heck of a football player. But you look at the group that they actually got. So take away the conversation of what would you have liked to have had and just look at what they landed. And it was a very balanced, talented, explosive class with a big physical offensive line. We talked about this. You could literally put a starting 11 on the field right now from the 2023 recruiting class. I'm not saying you should or would. You have 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers, 5 offensive linemen that can fit into all 5 spots. And the balance. So like in the 2020 class, you look at what they did in the 2020 class, you're like, got Tyler Buckner and Blake Fisher and guys like that. And you say, well, that's pretty good. But then there were misses in those classes. And then you look at other years, Vince, where in 2022, you've got, 2022, man, it was a big one. Hold on one second, Vince. So we're about to have something here real fast. So is he, did he seriously do that to the kid? Okay. Justin Thurman has committed to Notre Dame. And that's part of the reason that we wanted to do our show today. It is now being reported. I don't know that Justin has necessarily reported it yet, but it is now out there. I wonder if Justin did it on Instagram or not. But we had a chance to talk to Justin this morning and talk to him about his decision and picking Notre Dame. So that's kind of why we left running back off of this equation so far.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's noticed. We haven't talked about running back yet.
Yeah,
the 25 class.
Because we knew that Justin was going to commit, and so Justin Thurman is committed to the University of Notre Dame. There, he just went public with it. So Vince, just kind of quickly do that, and I'm going to tweet this story out.
Yeah, so obviously Justin Thurman, the 2025 running back, we talked about him yesterday, Ryan and I, and Ryan is in the chat right over there. And we talked about how he left the Grill and Chill in a great place. Yeah. And Notre Dame was in the driver's seat and obviously drove him to commit. 2 days later.
And look, all honesty, we can say it now because, some things you've got to, Ryan is correct that the Grill and Chill was the final thing. Sure. the thought was he was coming to see if this was definitely what he wanted to do, right? Like he came
Gotcha.
into the visit with the thought of, if everything checks out, then I'm going to end it. Not that he was coming to commit, but just kind of like what we're talking about, like Davis Andrews, right? Is, is the kid making this decision? Is he visiting to make a decision or whatever the case may be? And you kind of dive into it that way. So with Justin, it was, he thought this was the move he wanted to make, but he wanted to get back up here one more time and just really make sure that this is what he wanted to do. And he did. And now he is in the class. And he's a very intriguing player, Vince. When you look at Justin Thurman and you look at some aspects of him that you say, boy, like I know my guy Brandon, he's got these other running backs he definitely loves and wants over Justin. And I get it, because Justin hasn't played a ton, right? But what Justin is at this point is very talented and dynamic. He's already got 10.8 at speed. We talked about this. His 100-meter dash time as a sophomore is the same as Braden Lindsay's was as a sophomore. And that's the body type that to me is most similar to Justin. And I was gonna sit here and tell you all the reasons why Justin was gonna want to, commit to Notre Dame. But Vince, I think you and I just decided it'd probably be best to just have Justin come on and explain why he committed to Notre Dame. So
it's a great
we
idea.
are now joined by Justin Thurman. Justin, thank you so much for being on with us, man.
How are y'all both doing?
We are doing great, man. We are doing phenomenal. We are obviously here with a bunch of Notre Dame fans ready to talk about it. One thing that Notre Dame fans love, Justin, is they love speed. And certainly you bring a little bit of that to the table, man. So let's get into this, though, first. We were talking about sort of your decision-making process and the fact that you didn't necessarily come into this conversation or this visit this past, or this I should say summer process saying, okay, I'm going to take my visits, I'm going to make my decision by the end of my sophomore year. Talk us through the process of what it was like, Notre Dame getting involved and offering you, and then what led to this decision to say, hey, you know what? I know where I'm going. Let's get this thing over with.
So basically, after the two visits that I took, the first one being back in June, and then this one being just this past weekend, it just felt like home. I mean, in terms of just the culture, academics, the programming, the people, it just felt like it was the best place for me holistically, and it felt like it was the right fit, and just in terms of everything. And I believe that it's the right environment for me to be in for the next 4 years.
Now, when you look at the decisions, the factors that went into your decision, I know for you it wasn't as simple as who's got the best offense, and there's a whole lot of things. So when you went into this, what were the factors, the key factors? Say, this is what I'm looking for in a college. This is what a college that I'm going to commit to has to have, and how well did Notre Dame check those boxes?
I mean, Notre Dame checked off the boxes really well in terms of the culture, academics, program, and the people too. The culture there, the golden standard that they have is absolutely amazing. Just it's like a mentality that they have, that they hold the coaches and the players to that standard, and that's what helps them be so successful. And then in terms of the academics, I know Notre Dame has a long history of strong academics, and specifically for me, what I want to major in real estate, they have a very good real estate program there, and that's really that's what I'm really interested in and what I want to do after football. And in terms of the people, the environment is it's like a family environment. Coach Freeman is definitely a player's coach, and with him also too, having 6 kids, he understands how important family is. So I believe that, the environment, not only just Coach Freeman, but Coach McCullough and all the rest of the coaching staff, make it a warm, welcoming environment that has a lot of camaraderie, and it's just one that's is just always just at the top.
Justin, I want to add, you talked about relationships, you talked about the coaches and the family. Give us a little bit of background with your relationship with the coaches. How did it start? How did it grow? I'm sure that was a big part of your decision, but your relationship with the coaches.
So my relationship, first of all, with Coach McCullough, it started when he first offered me in May, back in the spring, during spring ball. And from there, we just really just grew the conversation and grew the relationship, and we just continuing to build. And He showed me how I would fit into the Notre Dame offense, and also too showed me how I would fit into Notre Dame in the school. And then he also not only just talked about football, but just talked about life and just how to be a better man, be a better person for the people around you, and just teaching me the things like a father. He also mentioned too during my weekends that you may not be looking for a father figure, but I'm going to treat you like a son. And that's what he really does with his players. And I believe that, I mean, that's just one of the great aspects about him. And then for Coach Freeman, he's a player's coach. And I believe that the way that he interacts with his players and the players' families and just the families in general is just great. And he's just always just open and welcome to everybody. And I believe that that mentality and also too just the aspect of him is what makes Notre Dame and the program so great.
Was your first trip to Notre Dame for the camp this summer? Was that the first time you'd been on campus?
Yes.
What was that experience like for you? Because I know I was there. We had a chance to see you in person. Actually, Vince, were you there that day, or were you with Dylan at the at one of his things? So I don't know if you were there. Yeah. Put together a heck of a performance. You know, I mean, athletically, I was telling people here, like, they had the broad jump thing, and I said Justin was one of two kids that actually out jumped they had like the set up and it only went a certain length, and you actually went just beyond it. So they had to kind of stretch it a little bit to get a proper measurement, which just kind of shows your explosiveness. But just overall, what was that experience like for you, and how did that factor in, or did it factor in to just the process of, yeah, this is where I want to be?
So it did factor into my decision because the working with Coach McAuliffe and getting an opportunity to see how he coaches, he's very detailed and specific about what his expectations are, and just the way that he coaches is just very specific in terms of his details and his feedback, and just how he just coaches up his guys. And I believe that that's something that's the way I want to be coached, and that's the reason why I chose Notre Dame.
The real estate thing is interesting because Notre Dame had another commitment. Actually, the last two commitments that Notre Dame has had, both are guys that have interest in real estate. Obviously, Kingston Viliama Asa is the other one, or Ace is the other one. You're a rising junior in high school. What made this be something that you're interested in doing? Obviously, living in Florida, you know about booming real estate right now. But what was it that really attracted you to this kind of being something you wanted to pursue?
To be honest with you, it's been something that I don't know. It just dawned on me that, like, when I was a little kid, that I just always wanted to be interested in properties and just how you can flip them around and make them like twice the value that they were before, and just being able to own and sell properties to people, and also to help people out in the community too who may not be able to afford such properties and like that. So that's just always something that I've always wanted to do.
That's really cool. Very cool. When you look at the decision-making process, we've talked a lot about a lot of other things. You've talked about academics, you've talked about the relationships and the fit. Football has to be a part of it too, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at Notre Dame and you say, okay, what was the vision that was what was given to you for how you fit? And then also, how do you see yourself fitting into the offense? Because obviously you could say, hey, I love the school and I love this, but the offense they run, man, that just doesn't fit what I do. Obviously, you didn't feel that way about Notre Dame. So what was it that you saw about this Notre Dame offense that you said, hey, I can play there, I fit there, my skills will translate to what they do?
I saw that, and specifically for the running backs, I saw how they utilized them, and just not only in the run game, but also too in the pass game too. They really utilize their running backs to their fullest potential with each skill set. And even though each running back may have a different skill set, they use those skill sets to their advantage so that they can put themselves in the best position for success and towards a win. So I believe what the skill sets I have, I can contribute to that even more and help the team to win and try to get to a national championship.
So you do a little of everything. Obviously, this past year, Tampa Jesuit, you had a very interesting situation. Obviously, you had a senior running back who just signed with Temple, who's a 1,000-yard rusher. So you were asked to play running back. You're asked to catch the ball. You're asked to play defense.
Yes.
If y'all haven't watched, Justin can stick. We showed that on film, and you had, I think, I can't remember count, like 7 or 8 different just tackles on kick coverage. Did a little bit of everything last year. What did you learn about yourself as a football player last year, kind of being asked to do so many different things where, maybe this year you're going to be maybe the lead back, but, last year you had to do a lot of different things. What did you learn about yourself, about the game from that experience last season?
I would say, I mean, playing multiple positions and playing both sides of the ball, it really, like kind of like I would say, it opened my perspective on how to play the game, and honestly, being able to see how the other side of the ball sees the game actually helps me better have a, I'd say a better way of playing on the offensive side. So because I know exactly what the defense is looking for in terms of like formations with the offense and what each player is assigned to be doing, it's just easier for me to basically see what the defense is doing so I can figure out a way to basically make a best play on them.
So as you talk about going into your junior year now, what are the parts of your game that you're most looking forward to showing like you've worked, because obviously you've worked on it already. Your fall camp started for you yesterday, right? But what are
Yes.
the parts of your game that you spent the most time this offseason really building and that you're looking forward to showing off this year now that you're going to, the expectation is that you're going to get a lot more opportunities now that Joquez is going off to Temple?
I would say definitely. I mean, the main thing is my speed. I want to showcase that I can eliminate angles and just blow through people too. Being a hard runner, a violent runner, people have described me running like an angry man, and
I get that.
so
like
I
it.
want to definitely showcase that I can, get yards after contact too. Being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, being able to just make a man miss and out and open the field. And just be a versatile back overall, and just showcasing all the skill sets that I have.
So, Justin, one thing I wanted to ask you, you brought up pass game. So I don't remember most of the film I saw from you as a sophomore of you catching the ball was like little slides and swings and screens and stuff. We're going to show the folks your spring game. And so we're going to show that violence and then also that ability to get the edge. And guys think they have an angle and they really don't when you're running around the corner. But you also called a touchdown pass down the field. Do you feel like that's going to be a bigger part of what you're going to be asked to do this year? Because was that part of kind of what went into is like, hey, I want to show that I can catch the ball, not just catch the ball on a screen and on a swing, but that I can be lined up and moved all around the field. And then how does that help you kind of look at how you fit into the next program? If you look at Notre Dame, they got 2 really good running backs last year. But do you feel like, hey, if I can build this part of the game, you can play us together. Forget a rotation. You can put us in the field together. I mean, is that kind of something that went into the process for you to really improving that part of your game this offseason?
Yes, it did.
That's good. That's good. I'm looking forward because you're going to be able to use that speed in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, that's the big thing and it's nice. I mean, look, I know you're not afraid of contact. We saw that on defense and on special teams, but it's nice sometimes to get out in space where you're not always getting hit by defensive tackles and linebackers, take on a couple corners every now and then, man. So that's good. So Justin, what's next for you? Obviously, fall camp, you're in fall camp, but from a recruiting standpoint, are you looking to get up to Notre Dame this fall? Are you going to be looking to try to help, this 25 class? Is there I don't know, like a quarterback in Tennessee, moving to Tennessee, you may want to give a call. Like what's up next for you, man?
Well, I would definitely that.
Little bit leading question there, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah. My plan is in terms of just the recruiting aspect, also to be ambassador for the 2025 class. Mm-hmm. Just basically, if any, just being an ambassador for those who are interested in Notre Dame and those who have offers from Notre Dame, and just, making them feel welcome and making them feel like they can be a part of this program, and just also to helping them with any questions or that they have about the program or how the recruiting process works. I'll just be there as an ambassador to help. And then in terms of this season, I'm just looking forward to showcasing my skills and helping my team to potentially get to a state championship and win that game. We have a pretty good team. We got a lot of young guys, but I believe that with great coaching and great, I would say, just being great teammates to each other and just hard work, I believe we could put something great together this season in Tampa Jesuit.
You guys got what, semis last year, or did you get to the state game last year?
So we made it to the state semifinals, and we played against St. Thomas Aquinas.
Gotcha. So yeah, you guys got a lot, because you people think private school, but there's some really good private schools in Florida, especially kind of on that western coast of Florida, where you guys are, and Aquinas is a little south of you guys, right?
Yes, that's in southeast Florida.
Yeah, so certainly a lot on your plate, man, and we'll let you get back to that. But are you kind of happy this process is over, or kind of what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
I'm just to be honest with you, I'm just that happy that I'm announced where I'm going and announcing where which school is the best fit for me, which is Notre Dame. And just that whenever I went up there, it just felt like home. It just felt like it was the right fit for me, and it felt like it was the right place to basically just spend my next 3 to 4 years at, not only on the field but also off the field. And it just felt like it was just the right place for me holistically in terms of every aspect of the school.
Now, I know this is a little bit down the road. Last question is, do you plan on going on a track to try to get into school a little bit early, like as an early enrollee that spring semester? Or are you going to be a guy that's, because I know for you it's a little different, Justin, because track is a big thing for you. So I wasn't sure if like you were going to try to do your senior year of track, or if you were going to get to Notre Dame early. Have you thought about that process yet, or is it still a little early?
So I would plan on running track my senior year, especially due to Jesuit doesn't allow early enrollment.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So I would have to go basically show up to Notre Dame or arrive at Notre Dame in June.
Gotcha. Okay, so that kind of answers that question for you. Yeah, so that's good. And track is obviously you're right now you're this obviously sprinter. Is that kind of where you're going to stay? Just kind of in the 100, 200. Do you do hurdles? I know you do
I don't do hurdles, but I do the 4x1. So
you do the 4x1. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming on us, man. Congratulations on this decision. Very excited about it. I know Notre Dame fans love getting speed. They love running backs. They love getting kids from Florida. And maybe one of these days somebody in the chat's going to be looking to buy a house from you one of these days. So who knows? Way down the road, though. Way down the road. But congratulations, man, and good luck in fall camp.
Thanks, and thank you for the time on here.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Justin.
Take care. Take care.
So that is Justin Thurman, folks. That is a really good kid, Vince. Like
oh my gosh! Like obviously, this is the first time that I've been able to hear him speak and have a conversation with him, and I mean, he just knocks it out of the park. I mean, and we're not even talking about his athletic ability. So he's going to be a good fit at Notre Dame. There's no doubt about it. And I'm happy that we were able to introduce him to the chat and to the Notre Dame community because
we've had him on. I mean, I know Ryan had him on and Brian Smith had him on, and he's a really sharp kid. He really is a sharp kid. And so he and I talked today, and he was all about coming on. So
it's great.
Really good football player. And it's funny, when Brian Smith first brought him up to me, we were talking several months ago, and he's like, this is the most Notre Dame kid you'll find in Florida. Like, that was one of the first things Brian Smith said to me, because Brian had a chance to meet the kid. And you all saw it. I mean, just sharp, thoughtful, engaging, already has his like future planned out, and apparently he's had that planned out since he was a kid. I love it when a kid who's a sophomore in high school basically says, when I was a kid. I'm like, my man, you're still a kid.
Right.
But he doesn't seem like it. He doesn't talk like it. He doesn't think like it. Like, this is a very mature young man. And I wanted Notre Dame fans to just get another sense of that now that he's in the class.
Sure.
You see what kind of an impressive young man he is. He really,
I have a kid that exact same age, 2 floors up, and I'm not sure he could give that kind of an interview. So I was very impressed with Justin and what he brings to the table. That's for sure.
And as far as a football player, Vince, I mean, obviously we announced that he was going to be, well, not we announced, like we broke it, but like we broke it to y'all in the chat,
right?
That Justin had committed to Notre Dame. We look at running back, Vince, and it's a very interesting scenario because right now the need is only one. But he still has 2 years of high school left, and a lot can change between now and then. But when you look at the class impact of getting Justin in the class, Vince, it was one of those things where you really only needed one. So you can focus on getting like an elite guy now, or you look for a skill set, a uniqueness to it. And Notre Dame is basically what they're doing here is they're taking a little bit of a flyer.
Sure.
Is they're saying, this is a kid that was buried behind a Division I running back, didn't play a ton, but we see elite skill, and we're going to try to get him before anybody else can figure it out.
There it is.
While Bama and Florida State, and Miami and Florida chasing the knowns, we're going to take a kid who's a little bit under the radar compared to other top backs, and we're going to get on him now because what Notre Dame is clearly trying to do at recruiting running back is adding speed. I mean, Jadarian Price, Jabron Payne, Keedron Young, And now this kid, and Aeneas Williams isn't slow by any stretch of the imagination. He's just a little bit more quick than he is a burner, but he's still a kid that can run. They are trying to add a lot of explosive athleticism. And this is a kid that's a top 250 recruit already and only rushed for like 200 yards last year.
Right.
And the only reason he's a top 250 recruit after rushing for only 200 yards is because people see one thing. That kid can absolutely fly as a football player. And I think that is what Notre Dame was looking for. And I do think that they saw a little something this summer that he's a put together kid, right? I mean, he's a very cut up, chiseled kid, still thin, 185, 190 pounds, but he's a kid that's going to he's going to be over 200 pounds easily by the time he gets to Notre Dame. And I think they saw that too. So they're betting on their evaluation of this kid. There's some more highly ranked running backs out there, but for whatever reason, the Notre Dame staff and Dylan McCullough especially just fell in love with this kid early. Yeah. And so as of right now, there's one running back. Now, a lot can happen between now and the next year with the current roster. Injuries, transfers, early NFL departures, things along those lines. So you don't really know if it's going to stay at 2. So I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame still recruits like perhaps like Usman Kroma. I could maybe see them staying on him, James Simon, a couple other guys. But this is a kid that they absolutely wanted. And if they only end up with one back in this class, they're perfectly content and fine with Justin Thurman being that back. There's no doubt about that, Vince.
Well, and he's going to have an opportunity, obviously, over the next 2 years to be the guy, right? And he's going to have also an opportunity. I mean, if he's a top 250 kid right now with the little bit of film that he has and, not being able to specialize at a position, I mean, good gracious, what's going to happen over the next 2 years when he is the guy that's getting the rock and he's going to be the focus of this offense? You know what I mean? So, plenty there. It feels like it's a high floor, high ceiling kind of a situation for Notre Dame. And, they're all in on him.
But that's kind of what they got to do, Vince. I mean, what are the odds that Notre Dame is going to go down to Florida or Texas or somewhere else and get a 5-star running back that's getting bags thrown at him? And also, this is the thing that people have to understand is until Notre Dame has that title under their belt, this is the kind of kid they have to thrive with. That right now he's not ranked real high, but this kid's got a lot of talent. And I want to bring up we're not going to watch a full film session again because we already broke his film down in a previous show a couple weeks ago. But I did want to pull up his spring film from their spring game. And I think you're going to get a chance to see kind of what Vince and I are talking about here as far as this kid's home run ability and the improvements catching the football. This is the first run. Watch him get to the corner. And then he turns on the afterburners a little bit there. Like he just glides into the end zone, 62-yard touchdown run on that particular play. And then he's got this is the touchdown catch right here. I believe he also has a couple pass pro plays on here too, but just look at the get off there, Vince, though, right? I mean, not really sure what he's doing yet running routes, but look at that burst off the line. I mean, he's got some juice. He really has some juice.
Well, he doesn't need to know what he's doing. He's just out running linebackers.
Right. So, and he'll learn it, right? I mean, he's a rising junior. He'll learn all that. So, but this is a kid, and he's got some agility. He's not a super sudden guy, but he can cut. He's a slasher type of back. He does run with good power. You know who his running style reminds me of, like the herky jerky nature? Does this not scream Josh Adams?
Oh, straight up, kind of that's kind of standing up tall.
Yeah, but just like
that's what track kids do. Track kids
more herky jerky, like than fluid.
Like 200-meter guys, they run kind of straight up like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Reminds me a lot of Josh Adams as far as his
I could see his
running style, not running back style, but just how he runs is more of what I'm referring to in that standpoint. But yeah, this is a kid. This is a pass pro. Right here, he steps up, takes on a D tackle. Right there, nice little find that cover 2 holder, QB. Nice job, nice job. And he plays in a good area. So this is a kid with a lot of ability, Vince, and a lot of potential, I should say.
Sure.
And you see that speed because that's the one thing you can't teach, Vince. Like I can teach footwork, I can teach a lot of things to a running back, but what I cannot teach is I can't teach you to be a 4.4.
Yeah, exactly.
And you either have it or you don't. Right now, I can enhance some of that a little bit. But yeah, you either have it or you don't.
Well, and a lot of college football recruiting is now turning to kind of like the NBA draft, right? They draft on potential, And this is a bit of a commitment on potential, right? I mean, let's be honest. And I think the tools are there on and off the field to be a great fit at Notre Dame, but they're kind of committing on potential, right? And so, but they've got 2 years to.
This is the playoff game from last year. Kerry, he had in the playoff game, and you're going to see an example of that too.
There he is.
A little bit of that too, Vince, where you see it. So yeah, there's you see just kind of that patience, nice hard running style, and he's just kind of got that speed, man. He doesn't look like he's fast, like he's moving fast, but then he does move fast.
Like
so
I formation.
Yep. This is a kid, and then you see the kind of the hard grinding style there.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of tools. And this is a playoff game. This isn't this is him running down on the kickoff. So I just wanted to show this playoff game last year. First round of the playoff, I believe. And you see him making a tackle here on special teams. So he's a good football player, man. Now, how good will he end up being? That's an unknown, right? And that's the part that you were talking about, Vince, is they are taking a little bit of a chance because we don't know that he can be a 20 carry guy at the high school level or college level. We haven't seen him do it yet. We don't know that he can get through an entire season and do all those kind of things. But here's what we know: he's a great kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's a smart kid. He is fast. He's physical, and he's willing to do whatever his team asks him to do to win. And that cannot be dismissed. This is a kid that could easily have gone somewhere else and said, "I want to be the guy somewhere else," and he could have done it. But he said, "Nope, I'm going to do what my team's asking me to do." I mean, that's him lead blocking right there, Vince. And you like guys like that.
Yeah, special teams, blocking, just doing everything.
Yeah. Catching and pass. I mean,
I love that.
That's what I think sold Notre Dame. And then they see the talent, the physical talent. The spring game was impressive. And they say, hey, we're willing to take a chance on a kid like this because we think he's got all the talent in the world. And Justin, he does. He's got a ton of talent. There's no doubt.
So what does this commitment mean for the class of 25? Brian, because that's kind of what this whole show was about the class of 25. We purposely didn't talk about running back. Now we are. So what does this commitment mean? They were aiming for 1. Maybe they get 2 down the road, but what does this mean for the class?
Well, what it means for the class, Vince, is they are adding impact players already in the 25 class. I mean, we've talked about how Florida's an issue for Notre Dame. Well, they just got their second running back from Florida, although he's not a Florida lifer. Like I believe he's from Missouri. I believe. Originally, I don't believe he's a Florida lifer, but Nate Roberts, when we broke him down, the tight end, we talked about this is a big play tight end. This isn't he looks like a throwback tight end. Nate Roberts does. Like when you look at him, he's like, Midwestern kid, thick neck and all that. But then you watch him run, you're like, this kid can run, right? This kid can really make big plays. And so you got a big play tight end. You've got a big play running back. And that's what Notre Dame is shooting for is they're, again, trying to be more and more explosive as a football team. And they're recruiting to that. That's why you recruit Cam Williams. That's why they recruited Logan Saldate, even though other people might have liked the more highly ranked guys. One of the reasons they recruited Aeneas Williams, and one of the recruits they recruited Kedrick Young and Jeremiah Love and Braylon James and guys like that. It's like you're trying to be a more explosive football team. And a kid like this is an explosive player because like last year's running backs or the 24 running backs, Kedrick Young is a bell cow type of runner. He is a more Audric Estime than he is Chris Tyree, for example, from a volume standpoint, right? Aeneas Williams is a little bit of a do-it-all guy. So a kid like Justin Thurman with that speed, Vince, is he's a little bit like what we talked about Jadarian Price being for this Notre Dame 2023 football team. Even if he's your number 3, you still figure out a way to get him touches because he can do with 5 carries what other people need 15 to do because of that speed. And Justin brings that kind of potential where early in his career, even if he's not your 1 or your 2, you can still find a role for him as a returner, as a third down guy, as a get him in there and get him 5 touches and hope that he gets 1 crease. Because with the way that Notre Dame blocks, he just needs like that. That's it.
Exactly.
And it's strike up the band.
Right.
And that's what they're clearly looking for. And we talked about the need to have another strong offensive class. And the part of the reason why is because this is another step towards that. Right. And it's a really important step. Very good step. You get a Florida kid, you get a Southern kid, you get a top 250 kid, 4-star kid, and you say, okay, now we're just keep adding to it. Now you've just got another voice. So when you're talking to Deuce and you're talking to Taylor Taylor and you're talking to these other top players, it's like you just got another guy in the board to kind of help make that happen. So I think all of those are positives for me, because this 25 class, if Notre Dame can, and this is what we were going to try to finish on before we found out he committed. But what Notre Dame needs to do, Vince, is they need to be able to put the kind of talent on the field offensively that other teams are. And I think Notre Dame has a better chance of doing that offensively than they do defensively. Like defensively, in a lot of ways, it's going to be about, you need to find the gems. You need to find the Julian Aguaras and the Tilleries and the Julian Loves and the Benjamin Morrisons, because for a host of reasons I really don't care to get into today, it's just defensive players tend to be guys that are just a little harder. The elite defensive players are a little harder for Notre Dame to get. And so you've got to be really on top of your P's and Q's when it comes to development and finding the guys with the I don't want to say projectableness or projects, because people take that the wrong way, but guys that are like a Logan Thomas, a Cole Mullins, the Benjamin Morrisons, the guys that are not necessarily high profile players, they have had better success doing that on offense. They just haven't done it consistently. They've had a class here, a class there, but if you can get this 25 class, and all of a sudden you've got back to back big time offensive classes. And then when this class arrives, the senior class will be the Jadarian Price, the Jabron Payne, the Eli Raridan, the Holden Stace, and the Tobias Merriweather class. Now, the reason I didn't say that was a big time class is because they came up short at some spots. They came up short at receiver from a number standpoint. But when you look at it, if you just look at pure running backs, I mean, I don't know that I've seen Notre Dame recruit running back to back the way they have recently. I mean, think about what Notre Dame has done at running back in the last 6 cycles. Chris Tyree in 2020. Audric Estime and Logan Diggs in 2021. Jadarian Price and Jabron Payne in 22. Jeremiah Love in 23. Keedron Young and Aeneas Williams in 24. And now Justin Thurman in 25. Like, that is big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And you need to be able to keep that going. And Coach McCullough has kept it going. And shout out to Coach Taylor for helping start it. But Coach McCullough's taken it to a whole nother level. Just a whole nother level since he's gotten here. And it's really impressive to see what they've done. And now you can kind of focus on, because it's always easier to keep a kid in the class than it is to get him in the class, Vince. So now you've got him in the class. Now you can focus your attention on, okay, let's go get some receivers. Let's go get another tight end. Let's go get a quarterback. And I think that's a big part of what they do.
Yep, no doubt about it. So that's going to do it for the offensive side, the offensive breakdown of the 25 class, and with a little sprinkle of an interview in there as well. So you're welcome for that. And
we'll end up doing the defensive one probably next week, Vince, is when we'll do. We'll do that one next week.
Gotcha.
And we'll dive into that. So
stay tuned. Maybe there'll be an interview then too. I don't know.
Because we could dive into that now, but that's going to get like really long. The show's going to get a little long. So we'll either do that later this week or next week. We'll get into that. But yeah, he's this is a big one.
It's an absolute big one. So that's going to do it for this part of the show. I assume we are going to the next part, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
So, hey, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your family and friends, give us a 5-star review. Tell us how much you enjoyed listening to Justin Thurman on the show. That would be awesome as well. And, stick around because there's more to come, but that's going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. All right, Brian, it's that time of day where we get to jump into the mailbag. Now, if you've got any questions, some people have been doing it already. Throw that MB in front of there. The little
super chat
mailbox emoji is always nice so that we know that you've got a question. We'll try to hit as many as we can here. Charlie Weiss's last belt loop has a I didn't put my phone on silent.
I'd get mad at you if I hadn't done that as many times as I've done it. So
put that on. And of course, it's not even a number that I recognize, so that's cool. Yeah. All right. So anyway, Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Coach Mr. Vince, who would be the first phone call you guys would make if you were on the coaching staff at Notre Dame? Thanks for the practice info.
It depends on what position I coach.
That's true.
I mean, I don't want Al Washington's first phone call to be to Deuce Knight. You know what I mean? And I don't want Gino Gadouli's first call to be to Jadon Blair or somebody like that, or Noah McHale or something. Look, if I'm the quarterback's coach, obviously that's an easy one. If I'm a running backs coach, that's an easy one. If I'm a receivers coach, my first call is to Taylon Taylor. If I'm a tight ends coach, my first call is to Nate Roberts, and my next call is to James Flanagan. I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? It's you're calling your top guys. If you're Joe Rudolph, I mean, that's an interesting one because I may actually call Josh Petty first, actually, because of because they're already in such a great position with like Owen Strebig and Rowan Byrne and those kind of guys. I almost feel like I might want to call Josh Petty first. But maybe Matty Augustine. Maybe that's the guy you call first. If I'm a defensive end coach, I'm probably calling Christopher Burgess or Bryce Davis first. One of those two guys first is probably where I'm going with that one. Defensive tackle, I'm calling Davion Dixon first, and then probably Jarquez Carter next. Probably be my next call. Linebacker, my first call probably be Noah McHale, him or Anthony Sacca. Here's what I do: is I would have Max Bull's first call be to Noah McHale. And I would have Al Golden's first call be to Anthony Sacca, probably, or maybe Nathaniel Owusu. Now, probably Marcus Freeman's first call to be to Owusu Koromoa's brother. Kind of go about it that way. Cornerback wise, I'm Dorian Brew. I mean, that's a big one. Dorian Brew, Cree Thomas, Dallas Golden would probably be the first three guys that I would call. Mark Zachary would be getting an early call. Devin Williams would get a very early call for me. And then safety-wise, it's probably Ivan Taylor and Jadon Blair, probably my first two calls, and then Ethan Long right after that. So that would be sort of my early priority list for first calls. But I also wouldn't highlight that either because you don't want other kids to get a little upset that they weren't your first call. But
I'm just calling the recruiting office and asking for a call list. That's what I would do.
That's
like,
right.
Hey, who am I calling? I got this.
Yeah. Yep.
Another super chat from Raymond this time. Thank you so much, Raymond. Really appreciate it. Thanks you guys for all the hard work and the pride you put into this community. Kickoff is this month.
I can't believe it, man.
I know, right? It's August 1st, man. It's August 1st.
Cannot believe it. Yeah, it's thank you for that, Raymond. And Raymond is a board member. And if you haven't signed up for the message board, you should do so. Vince, we're so close. Let me look at the number. As of right now, we are, I believe, about 10 away. Let me see here real quick. We are about 13 away right now from getting to our goal. So remember, it was like 40 a week ago.
Yeah, it was 20 the last time we talked on here. So,
and that's with me. So what happens is sometimes like there's issues where people's credit cards are, expired. And so then they're kind of taken off the register and then they've got to sign back up. And so there's always sort of this fluctuation a little bit, but I just updated that. And so, yeah, we're very close. So if you've been thinking about making the leap, now's the perfect time to make that leap.
Right.
Went on there yesterday, told people, okay, we've allowed a lot of OT threads, off-topic threads all summer, but now the football camp's going, it's time to focus on football. So then, of course, yesterday, I wanted to talk, too, about the big recruiting push that Notre Dame made this week. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my midweek rundown tomorrow. But, what Chad Bowden and his staff did yesterday, too, kind of got a little bit overshadowed by the Jerry Maguire thing and then the jersey release and then the Under Armour leak and all that other kind of stuff. But man, what they did yesterday was amazing. Like just really impressive. And the timing of it to me doesn't seem like a coincidence that it was with the 24 kids before the page turns to the 25 kids. This is very, very well, very, very well done.
Yeah, no doubt. Another super chat from Charlie. Coach, all jokes, I thought when you said special guest, it was going to be Ryan. Congrats to this young man. You can see he's a future leader. #speed, #IB.
If I was you, if I was in your shoes and I teased a special guest and it was literally just another member of our staff, I would be so pissed.
Yeah, that's not special.
That'd be
it's
like
just a guest or not even
I don't
a
know
guest.
What it's called for a show like this. It's not clickbait because there's not really like click on kind of thing, but like false advertising. Yeah. I guess, it's like maybe that would be kind of, that'd be a little lame. I'm not that lame. So yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, I appreciate that. And we got some more questions here, Vince. Not a ton of questions in so far, at least that I've started. So
all right,
if you want to get
From
your
Rob
questions
Osgood.
in, get them in now.
Absolutely. Hey guys, thank you so much for what you do. I love the fact that Notre Dame is recruiting North Carolina hard. Who from North Carolina is on their radar? 2 games in North Carolina this year is huge in my view. Going to the Duke game here.
Well, they have 3 total games in the Carolinas because they also play against South Carolina, or in South Carolina against Clemson this year as well.
That's true.
So yeah, they're going to be in the Carolinas a lot this year. Obviously, a guy that Ryan and I are both incredibly high on that's from North Carolina is Jordan Young, who's a very talented player. Could play receiver. I like him as a safety, to be honest with you. There's an offensive lineman, David Sanders, Notre Dame likes. I don't think that he necessarily likes Notre Dame as much as they like him right now. He's a big-time top 10 national player. Bryce Davis is a defensive end from North Carolina that Notre Dame is trying to make a run at. He's talked to us about getting up for a visit this summer. See Isaiah Campbell is, I believe, how he says his name. But Isaiah Campbell is a big defensive end from North Carolina that's on Notre Dame's radar. They were recruiting Gus Ritchie, but actually during the show, he actually announced his commitment to North Carolina. So he's off the board, and I'm kind of okay with that. I kind of liked him, but I also wanted him to kind of wait. He wasn't a guy I necessarily wanted to push for. He ends up going to North Carolina at this point in time. And then, like I said, we talked about Jordan Young, but then another guy that I really only recently watched is Jadon Blair, the kid that visited this weekend, Vince. 6'4" kid, smooth, fluid, tons of upside, very talented safety from North Carolina. I didn't, when I first watched him, I was like, I like this kid. Don't know that Notre Dame's going to really be a player. They absolutely made themselves a player for this kid with the visit this past weekend. Like, I don't think it's kind of like the Micah Gilbert situation in 2024, Vince. I don't think Jadon really. I hope I'm saying his name. It's either Jadon or Jadon. I'm not sure. Jadon. We'll go with Jadon. I'm not sure that Jadon really understood how much of a fit he is at Notre Dame until he got here. And that happens sometimes in recruiting, Vince. And I think that's what happened with Micah Gilbert. Sure. It's like, I think he liked Notre Dame, but there's just other schools he liked better, including Michigan. Michigan was his leader. But then he got here and he's like, yep, it's done. It's over. This is where I fit. And that just happens with some kids. Not all. I mean, some kids, you got to convince them to be here, and that's okay too, right? But some kids, they just show up and they're like, yep, this is it. This is the move. And I'm hoping that that Jadon had that same kind of feeling, in my opinion. So, yeah, North Carolina is a very important state in Notre Dame 24, and it'll be that way again next year.
Jason Smith, scale of 1 to 10, grade the defensive line class that would be with Dixon, Carter, Marks, Burgess. Would 4 be the number?
Yeah, that class would concern me a little bit if that was the 4-man D-line class, because to me, that's a lot of big interior guys in that class. I mean, Davion Dixon, 6'2.5", 300. Jarquez Carter's a pure 3 technique. Marks is a guy that is probably a 3 technique. He's probably an inside guy. He's like 6'6", 265 right now. And he's a good athlete for an interior guy, but he's not a guy that I want rushing off the edge. Chris Burgess could play edge, but he's a power guy. He's a power end that could also eventually grow inside, although I'd like to see him stay outside for now. But to me, that's 4 talented kids, Vince. And I'd be happy if any of those 4 committed Notre Dame, but it's kind of like, I don't know that you can take all 4 of them.
Yeah, the combination.
Because there's just not a lot of positional flexibility there. Maybe if there was a 5th guy in the class and it was a pure edge rusher, I could live with it, because then you have Burgess on the big end, and then you'd have that other guy as the number 5, kind of pass rusher type, and then you'd have your 3 end guys inside, and then you could restock the interior for defensive line. I could live with that. But that would be missing. It'd be the same complaint I had about last year's class, Vince, but even more so, because last year's class was like the 23 was the 3 big ends and Armo Mukum and Boubacar and Brennan Vernon. But you're like, but 1 or 2 of those guys is probably going to develop into an interior guy. Who's your edge rusher, right? And now it'd be even more so because, I mean, 3 of these guys are pretty much already inside guys at this point in time. So talented group, but just don't love the positional fit of that group. So, yeah.
Tyler Evans with the super chat. Thank you very much, Tyler. We're 25 days away from kickoff. How excited are you for this upcoming season? And is this one of the most exciting seasons from past seasons?
Vince, I want you to answer this one first.
Sure.
Because I've been asked this question a lot lately, and I want to see if I'm the only one or not, but I want to hear your answer to this. So, Vince, as far as like when you look at this season,
sure,
you're excited. I mean, you and I are always excited for the season to start, right?
Yes.
But just like if you were to say rank it excitement level, and then I want you to tell us what your excitement is based. Is it just about this team? Is it about just football being back, or is it about something? Just be curious, kind of why you have that excitement level or not. I mean, the answer could be that you're not as fired up about it. So I would like to see you answer this one first.
Well, I am excited about this season. There's no doubt about that. And I think one of the main reasons, well, there's many reasons. I think the main reason is you and I have talked over the years that we've known each other, that we've worked together, that we've done shows together, that we've just had private conversations together. We've talked about the fact that Notre Dame it just feels like they're a quarterback away. They're a championship level quarterback away from being a championship level team. They've had the parts and the pieces at other positions in the past, folks. I'm telling you that they've had talent, they've had athleticism, they've had speed. Now, I will say that it is deeper throughout this roster than it's ever been before. There's no doubt about that. They've got more depth than they've ever had before across the roster, but they've had the high end guys. Like those guys have existed, but they didn't have the quarterback. They didn't. And they do this year. They have a quarterback that can take them places. They have a quarterback that is not afraid to make a defense pay for picking one or the other pass or run to stop. Notre Dame has been woefully one-dimensional in big games, which is why they haven't had a whole lot of success in big games. From what I've seen so far in the spring, and then obviously the few practices that we've seen in the fall and everything that we're getting from our sources, I just feel like this offense has the opportunity to be a championship level offense because they have a quarterback that can take them there. Now, he's got tons of options. He's got tons of weapons. He's got, I think, a good offensive coordinator that's going to put him in a good position. I think he's got a good head coach that's going to allow all those things to take place. So those are all parts of it. But if I had to boil it down to one thing, it's that they have a quarterback that can take them there. So I'm super excited about it. They're going to be able to score.
Yeah,
and
should be.
That's always been my worry going into games is scoring the football. Can you score against good quality defenses? Can you if your defense isn't having a great day, can the offense pick them up? That hasn't always been the case, sometimes, but not on a regular basis. Yeah. So that's what really excites me about this season. No doubt.
I had a buddy of mine ask me this, and he said, how would you stack the excitement you have for this season up against past seasons? And I said, this is probably the most excited I've been since 2015, and I'm more excited about this season than I was that season for a couple of reasons. Number one, how a lot of Notre Dame fans feel about Al Golden is like how I felt about Brian Van Gorder. Like I want Al Golden to do a better job, but the whole point is, and maybe we're partly at fault of this because we tend to be very critical of coaches in a way that we understand what we're saying, but maybe some people don't, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. So like they take it worse. Like we were very critical of the job Al Golden did last year, rightfully so. But the standard was, did he coach championship caliber football? And the answer is no. But with some, that got turned into he sucked,
right?
And it's not that. He needs to do better. This defense is light years ahead of where that team was in 2015. And you talked about the quarterback situation, Vince. Part of what made me excited about that 2015 team is I thought Malik was going to be a really good quarterback that year.
And he was on the road to doing that.
Yeah, and I caught a lot of flack for this at the time, but I said if Malik goes down, because the whole story then was if Malik goes down, you're in trouble.
Sure.
Because you had Deshaun Kaiser who had a terrible spring game, and then Brandon Wimbush was a true freshman. And I said, they'll be fine. You'll be fine. I'm not as confident in the backup this year as I was then because the better player this year is the freshman, in my opinion. But, yeah, the quarterback part is exciting, but Sam Hartman is light years ahead of where Malik Zaire was from a passing standpoint and a standpoint of just experience. I mean, Malik had one start under his belt going into the 2015 season. That was in the bowl game where he threw for less than 100 yards. but it's just about the leadership. But you knew there was talent at receiver, there was talent at running back, there was a talented offensive line. You had talent on defense, even though I didn't trust the coaching even then. Where I trust the coaching more on this football team just because of the defensive side of the ball. I think the quarterback is impactful, but it's just this team is really talented, and I feel this team is really talented. And I'm going to be proven right or wrong. We'll find out, right? But I look at this team, and it's not perfect. They do not have the best roster in college football, right? They're going to have to play above their, their kind of potential maybe in a couple areas and maybe be a little better than we thought in a couple others. And they're going to have to catch some breaks. They're not a team that's just going to go out there and steamroll like 2019 LSU. They're going to have to catch some breaks, but they're a team that if they catch some breaks can be a really, really good, potentially championship caliber football team this year. But the other reason I'm excited too, Vince, is it's just about college football in general. I think this is going to be a fun year of college football. Because I don't see any dominant teams out there. I don't see a team that's just like way better than everybody else. And it's partly because I think Georgia and Bama are going to be a little bit below what they've been in recent years. Still outstanding, right? It's just not as good as maybe the last two teams. I think Clemson's going to be better. Again, Ohio State's still going to be really good. Are they going to be as good as the last couple of years? We'll find out. Michigan's still going to be really good, but they haven't been great. But it's just about more so, Vince. The rest of the leagues, the bottom is getting better. The middle is rising up. I look at North Carolina and I'm like, man, this team's got a chance to be really, really good. This team's got a chance to do some things, but also this has got a chance to be a really fun year of college football, just in general. And I look at like North Carolina. I was going to talk about North Carolina, and you look at them, you're like, man, their defense is just bad because you look at the numbers at the end of the year, and they give up 30 points per game. And then you kind of break it down, and you're like, they were bad at times, but they also showed some potential. And if they can just get a little bit better, maybe they can make a run because their offense is going to be pretty good. You can talk yourself into North Carolina contending for the ACC title. I don't think they're going to do it, but that's why I included them as my sleeper team. Whereas 2-3 years ago, it's Clemson, and then there's nobody else that should even be in this conversation.
Right.
Like it just is the league. So that league's getting better. The Big 12 is going to be competitive this year. The Pac-12 might be the deepest conference in college football from the standpoint of the number of teams that have a legitimate shot to win that conference. Not deepest as far as, they got a bunch of teams that can win a title. It's not like the SEC West from several years ago. But just as far as when you look at just the conference by itself, forget national titles and playoff, Vince, there's like 6 teams in that league that have a shot to win the conference championship, in my opinion. You've got Washington, you've got Oregon, you've got Utah, you've got USC as the 4 that everybody talks about, right? But then there's Oregon State, who I'm not sleeping on. And then, probably 5 maybe. So Washington, Oregon State, USC, Utah, maybe UCLA can sneak in there. I mean, they're just – but there's at least 5 teams that have a legitimate shot to win that championship, maybe 6. Does Arizona do some damage? And then there's other teams in the league that aren't going to win the title that are going to have an upset win or a big win. Washington State's going to beat someone that we don't think they're going to supposed to beat, and it's going to knock that team out of title contention. Arizona's going to do that to somebody this year. I promise you. So that's what I'm looking forward to, man. So it's not just Notre Dame. I just think this is going to be a really fun year of college football. I really do. And that's where a lot of my excitement comes from as well. But for Notre Dame specifically, it's hard not to have the quarterback conversation be a big part of it, Vince. I mean, Notre Dame's got a kid who currently ranks in the top 20 all time in passing and passing touchdowns. Yeah. And everything we complained about last year, we're going to find out if we were right or not, honestly. Yeah. I mean, we've said the receivers are better than people think, and the offense should be better, and blah, 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 blah. Well, we're going to find out if we're right or not. And I kind of get excited about that because it's like, well, I want to know. And now, if we're wrong, we reevaluate where Notre Dame is. That's fine. That's okay. It's part of it. But I don't think we are. I don't. I think there's a lot of talent here, and I think you finally have a quarterback who's going to be able to bring it out of people.
Exactly.
Speaking of quarterbacks,
Robert Bishop, is Deuce Knight better now that CJ Carr was as a sophomore?
They're very different, Vince. Okay, so if you're going to ask me who would I want as my starting quarterback as a sophomore, it's CJ. Because CJ was very much ahead of where Deuce was from a fundamentals and reads and all the, just the way he was coached. I mean, this is a kid that, kind of grew up playing football. CJ was ahead at the same age. Deuce has more God-given physical ability.
Sure.
Now that doesn't mean Deuce isn't smart and he can't read a defense. He just doesn't have that same experience and that same background that CJ had that makes CJ such a fundamentally sound player. That's all. And there's a lot of kids that aren't as where CJ was as sophomores from that standpoint. And then CJ took a jump physically as a junior. That's a big thing for me. CJ got stronger. His arm got stronger. He got more impactful as a junior. And I'm hoping he takes even another jump as a senior. But Deuce is the more physically gifted. He's taller. He's got a bigger frame. He's got a more powerful arm. He's a better runner, even though the gap in athleticism isn't what people think. That's probably the most underrated part of CJ Carr is his athleticism as a quarterback. He is a very good athlete. He just doesn't run.
Yeah.
Like he's not a runner. He's a scrambler, not a runner. You're not going to be running a bunch of Q power with CJ Carr and a bunch of power read with CJ Carr. You can do some of that with Deuce, although I would not. I would still not do that with Deuce. That's just not. I'd rather have him sitting in the pocket than scrambling. But he can do that a little bit more effectively. So they're very different players. Very different players. But CJ has the higher floor. I'll put it this way, Vince. CJ has the higher floor. Deuce has the higher ceiling. Deuce might have the highest ceiling of any quarterback Notre Dame has signed since Jimmy Clausen. I mean, that's how talented he is. And he has some work to get there. That's really what it boils down to.
Jason DeWilkins, what is with all the fascination over the apparel deal? I can't fathom why so many people, as part of the IB Nation, are so up in arms over Under Armour or Nike or Jumpman. Am I just old, or what am I missing?
No, I think it's you and I are both older, Jason, and we both realize there's a lot more important things in life to worry about than who Notre Dame's apparel deal is going to be with from a gear standpoint. To me, I care more about what does the choice say about you and your character. And that's really my big thing about Nike is if Nike didn't have the business practices they had, I wouldn't care if they signed with Nike. That's the only reason I don't dislike Nike. It's like people say, why do you hate Nike? It's that right there. It's because some things are more important to me than what the kids like. We're the grown-ups. We're supposed to be the leaders. We're supposed to be the ones saying, no, it's not okay to just like cool shoes if you know that what they're doing is really morally reprehensible, right? So that's my issue with it. But if that wasn't if Nike just said, you know what, we're going to move all our factories to the United States. And we're going to only do this or only do that. I said, cool. All right, go buy me some Nike gear. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I got no issue with it. I mean, they charge enough for like you think they'd be made from American workers as much they charge for stuff. But, that's a different conversation for a different day. But a lot of it is, Jason, it's just about being older. You and I are older. And we have different priorities where people who are 21 really apparently care about whatever Nike do. And they think what it is a lot of younger people, like some knucklehead on Twitter yesterday was like, it's a terrible answer because I said I didn't like Nike. And I'm like, okay, so me not having the same opinion as you and not caring about a apparel deal as much as you do makes me dumb, apparently. And, kids only care. When was the last time you heard a football player say I committed to a school because they're signed with Nike or Adidas or whoever else? When was the last time you actually heard that? Basketball, that's a real thing. In basketball, that is absolutely a real thing because of the sneaker deals and the different type. It's easier to do that with one player in basketball. It's just not the reality in football. Now, that doesn't mean kids don't like, but here's the thing. Go watch Notre Dame players walk around campus. When they're not wearing their Notre Dame issued gear, they're wearing Nike stuff. They can still wear Nike stuff. When they go out with friends, they can wear Nike all they want. It's just when they're at practice, they wear Under Armour stuff. Like nobody makes them. You can't wear Nike anywhere. Like Michael Jordan, when he was signed with Nike, couldn't wear like Reebok stuff. Remember when they did in the Dream Team, they had the American flag draped over his Reebok thing? Like kids don't care about that stuff.
Nope.
They like Nike gear, and guess what? They're going to use their NIL money to go buy Nike gear. Whoever Notre Dame signs with. So this notion that Notre Dame's not going to be able to get recruits because they're with Under Armour, I'm like, what's your evidence of that? Well, these Nike schools recruit very well. Are they recruiting well because they're Nike schools or because they're Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so,
come on.
There's also some Nike schools that can't recruit, their way out of a paper bag.
Right.
So that stuff is just so overblown.
I mean, you can pose in front of the basketball player that's on the football locker room door at Michigan all you want. But that's not, I mean, it makes for a cool picture, right?
Right.
But that's not why a kid is choosing Michigan.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's just not.
Especially since Notre Dame has consistently beat Michigan for top recruits the last 5-6 years. So, and with their Under Armour stuff. So now there's some 21-year-old listening to this right now losing his absolute mind that we're saying this.
That's fine.
Right. And that's the whole point, Jason, is what Jason got to is it's that right there. It's that young people and Vince, we were this way when we were 18 to 21. This isn't a knock on, like, I can't stand, like, there are issues I have with the younger generation. But sometimes it's like every negative we put on them is like, well, no, we were that way when we were 18 and 21. We cared about things looking back now, like, dude, I cannot believe that was the most important thing in my life when I was 18.
I definitely cared about stuff.
You know what I mean?
It was stupid. Don't get me wrong.
And gear was a lot more important to me. I literally, when I was in college and high school, mainly because somebody else was buying my gear, my parents, I had a million hats and they would match. I had a hat to match every shirt that I wore.
That's hilarious.
Right? Like, that stuff mattered to me. Now, I can't tell you the last time I left my house not in IB gear simply because it's the most convenient thing for me to wear. And it's always clean because I have to have them for shows. I just don't care about that stuff anymore.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
And some 21-year-old kid thinks that, Justin Thurman's going to flip to someone else because Notre Dame's not with Nike, or some other kid's not going to pick Notre Dame because they're not with Nike, or whatever the case may be. It's just, it's overblown. It's unimportant. And it's not, I've been doing this a long time, Vince. I've literally never once had a kid tell me he picked a school because of who their apparel deal was with.
Exactly. Thank you.
Never once. Basketball, I absolutely have. Never in football. So I just think it's overplayed. I really do. Now, does that mean that I don't think there's things Under Armour need to do better? Of course I do. Because it's all part of the branding of the Notre Dame program. Of course I do. But there's a lot more potential to be unique from a branding standpoint with Under Armour than there's with Nike. With Nike, you're just one of X, right? If Under Armour does it right, they can package Notre Dame correctly and really make this something to sell. They just don't do that yet. And that's something that Notre Dame needs to demand from them, in my opinion. But we'll see if that changes or not. But yeah, I'm with you, Jason. It's just it's cool to have a different opinion. You can think Nike's an important thing and all that. That's fine. It's the anger that some young people have about that Notre Dame signed with Under Armour. Like, you're really that mad about gear?
Well, there's some anger out there, man.
Yeah.
Like, so that it needs to be redirected. Because like, if that's how angry you get about a decision that you had nothing to do with and doesn't affect you in any way, then man, you've got some other issues. That's all I'll say. Like,
and I didn't hear those people on Twitter being mad when we were told where we could and couldn't go as a society and what we had to put into our bodies and what we, no issues with that. But God forbid Notre Dame signed with Under Armour, and these people are just irate. Boy, things got to change. Literally, and God love them. But someone on the board is like, there needs to be an investigation into this because Jack Swarbrick's son works at Under Armour. I'm like, oh first of all, there's a lot of things in our country that need to be investigated right now. This ain't it.
Nope.
Notre Dame is free to sign with whoever they want for whatever reason they want. Now, is nepotism ever a good reason to do something? No. But here's the deal. They didn't turn down more money from Nike to sign with Jack's kids' company.
Right.
Jack's kids' company, as far as I've been told. Now, again, this isn't official. Notre Dame has not commented on this. But from what I have heard, Under Armour partly won this because they offered Notre Dame a lot more money than anybody else did.
It's the biggest apparel deal in the country.
Yeah, that's called good business, right? Now, there's things that I would do, but just some of the responses I see, I'm like, you're really worked up about the apparel deal.
Man.
Now, I get worked up about the apparel deal for a different reason. It has nothing to do with the gear. It has to do with who's being forced to make the gear. Right? Because I kind of think those things are things we should care about as a society. But you'll brush that under the rug and get mad because the kids like Nike, and there's a lot of things we should be getting mad about in our country right now. What apparel company Notre Dame goes with is not one of them.
Man, it just doesn't matter.
We just lost some customers for that. I'm cool with it.
You know what? That's okay.
Cool with it.
That is really okay.
It's not that big of a deal.
Man. Brandon, what are some scenarios, in your opinion, that could cause Notre Dame to take 2 running backs in 2025? Does Dealin continue to recruit Chroma, Anderson, etc. You kind of touched on this a little earlier.
Yeah, a little bit. I think the big thing, Brandon, we talked about the guys that they would recruit. It would require there to be some departures from the current roster. So at least one transfer from the younger class. So that would be the Jeremiah Love, the 23 and 24 class. You'd have to have at least one departure from that class, whether it be transfer, injury, something along those lines. And then like maybe a Jeremiah Love as a junior, or as let's say as a sophomore, Jeremiah Love just becomes like a 1,000-yard back. And say, you know what? If he's already that good as a sophomore, he's not going to be around past 3 years.
Right.
We may need to look into bringing in a second back, right? And so, and then you get a situation. Let's say that as in 2024, that Jadarian Price or Jabron Payne, one of the two, breaks out and is like 1,300-yard rusher, and then Jeremiah Love's playing really well. Well, guess what? In 2024, that guy's going to be a junior. If he breaks out with that kind of season, he's out. I mean, and should be, honestly. I mean, we've talked about this with running backs. You have a very short shelf life. The minute you're ready for the NFL and the NFL has value in you, take it.
Absolutely.
Unless you just don't care about that kind of thing,
Right.
So
right.
It'd be that kind of thing combined with injuries. It's not just the guys are good and they leave for the NFL, because you've got plenty of bodies that have to be injuries / transfers also happening on top of that. Vince, is where it would be for me. But you could also just decide this certain kid's just too good not to take. I mean, you could get to that point in time too, where it's like that kid's just too good not to take.
Sure.
That'd be more Chroma than it would be Anderson for me at this point.
What is that? DLKALL01. I'm just going to spell it out because I'm not sure where that is. Okay.
I was going to say DL call 01 and would have been my best guess.
That's fine. 24 class is almost wrapped up. Similar to a couple previous seasons, most coaches have had the chance to focus on the next class. How does that benefit the coach, and why hasn't that helped in the past?
I don't know if that means why it hasn't helped in the past.
Because it has helped in the past.
I think it had. Yeah, I think the reason that you haven't seen the boost is because there just were limitations to the previous coaching staff that were never going to allow them to get over a certain level.
Right.
I would argue if they didn't fill up sooner, that things would have been worse. I mean, that's the counter that I would have to that is, again, we're sitting there talking about how we think this is a really talented Notre Dame football team. Well, that didn't get there by accident. Right. But I would also say, if not for some transfers, I don't have the same excitement about this football team too. I mean, so there's that counter to it, is if you didn't have Sam Hartman and Thomas Harper and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, especially Sam Hartman, I don't know how I'd feel about this football team this year. I say there's a lot of really talented players, but I'd feel a lot about like I did last year's football team. Because if you didn't go to the portal, you'd have Tyler Buckner as your quarterback.
Correct.
And I'd be like, and maybe even Drew Pine. And I'd say, look, these are good players. I'd say exactly what we said last year. You got a chance to do this, but there'd be always that but he's got to prove that he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
But he's got to prove he can do this, this, and this. Well, now that's a little bit answered. So you look at it and say the roster's not complete, and that's something that has to get fixed. But that's also why I like the recruiting from the last couple of years, since Marcus Lynch's been the head coach, is way more balanced. Not the big numbers misses we saw from the past, but that was more of a coaching issue than it was. Because like sometimes, the other thing too is sometimes they would wrap up too soon with kids, and this is the biggest difference. The current staff is wrapping up with better caliber early players than the previous staff did. They're not taking some of the guys that you're just like remember the one year they took Elijah Taylor, Brandon Tiasman, and Mike Treadway? And my response is, I'm okay taking all three of those kids individually. I'm not okay with taking all three of those kids as a unit, as a group. It's kind of like, I'm okay taking a Tabor on Benny Powell. If you want to take a flyer on him, take a flyer on him. But he can't be the same. The other two guys can't be the same guy.
Sure.
Right. And that's what they did a lot, Vince, is they took those flyers on kids, and you're like, this kid's not going to pan out, right? Like, that. You can convince yourself all you want this kid can play. He can't. He's just a number, and that's really all you're looking for. So that's the difference that I would say is the thing where it helps now. It's just better players.
Josh Buffalo, the motivational business banker. Is there a current commit in 25 or a possible commit that could be or is the biggest impact on Deuce's recruitment?
Not that will happen. I mean, if Taylor Taylor went committed tomorrow, that might have an impact on Deuce, but I don't see that happening. I don't even know if Taylor has a leader right now, much less if he'd commit to Notre Dame. But yeah, something like that would be an impact. I think really the biggest impact on Deuce's recruitment, Vince, is just going to be the relationship that Notre Dame has with him and the vision that they have for him as a player. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Because he's going to be one of the, if he commits to Notre Dame, he's still going to be one of the first in the 25 class. And I don't know that he's sitting back and waiting for a certain guy to commit or, that kind of a thing. I mean, he's going to be a big part of building the 25 class. So I would almost reverse it. And I would say the commitment of Deuce would be more of an impact on other 25 kids than the other way around.
Yeah, you want a quarterback that yes, Vince, I think you nailed it. You want a quarterback that doesn't need to be convinced by others. As far as other players, okay, you've laid out the vision for me. I've bought in. Now let me go lead others here, is the way that I look at it.
He needs to be the Pied Piper of the class. I mean, that's just the nature of the position, right? I mean, and the nature of the position for guys for quarterbacks is that they're leaders, and they got this is where they start their leadership right here. Yep. I mean, two years before they even step foot on campus, this is where they start their leadership. Mr. 2.0, do you think JT sticks? Justin Thurman, that we just spoke with. Do you think he sticks if ND can't retain Dylan McCullough? If I remember that there's been talk of him going to the NFL eventually.
Potentially. He's also said he wants to be a head football coach. I think the big thing for me, Vince, is that's why Notre Dame does such a good job of selling Notre Dame as well. I mean, we just talked to Justin Thurman. By his own words, the first coach he talked about wasn't Dylan McCullough. It was Coach Freeman.
Right.
Now, Coach McCullough played a huge role in making this happen, but it's all pointed to the boss and the faith that like if there was ever going to be a recruit leave because of his relationship with the assistant coach, it was CJ Carr. I mean, CJ Carr and Tommy Rees were very tight. But Coach Rees did a really good job of selling not just himself and the relationship, but selling Notre Dame and the benefits that Notre Dame can have for CJ. And then, of course, Coach Freeman got involved in it, and that's important. And that's why CJ saw it through. Hey, you know what? Coach Freeman's here. That change isn't happening. Notre Dame is still the school that Coach Rees told me it was.
Sure.
And from what I understand, Tommy Rees hasn't gone to Alabama and changed his he's a lot like he's not going to Alabama bad-mouthing Notre Dame. Hey, remember all that stuff I told you when I was in Notre Dame? It was all bullcrap, man. He hasn't done that. And so all the things he said to CJ about what make Notre Dame unique and special and all that are still there. And same thing with Coach McCullough. And so there's got to be a level of trust in Coach Freeman if you're Justin Thurman or Kedron Young or anybody else, that if Coach McCullough gets the job that you and I hope he gets, which is a head coaching job, because that's what he wants. And you and I both believe I think we both believe, I shouldn't speak for the two of us, actually. I'm sorry, Vince, because I don't know that we've talked about this. I think Dylan McCullough will be a very good head football coach.
Sure, yeah.
I think he's very disciplined. I would like for him to be a little bit more personable, outwardly personable around the media. But the kids, the kids love him. He's an older guy. He can relate to the young people in a way that you want a head coach to relate to them, which is, I'm not your friend, I'm your coach.
Yeah.
But I love you and I respect you and I'm going to treat you like a son, right? That's what they need. They need a father figure, not a big brother. And I think that's important. I think you do well. I think he's been around some good head coaches. He can understand structure and all that kind of stuff. And it's what he wants to do. And I think he's earned it and deserves it. So we'll see if he gets it. So that'd be great for Coach McCullough, and I would support that. Then there's got to be some trust that Coach Freeman is going to go out and make a replacement hire of someone that can do just as good of a job. And I think he will. So I'm not super concerned about it from that regard, because I don't think he's committing Notre Dame just for Dylan McCullough.
Sure. And there it is. So that's what I was going to say. Based on the conversation, look, I point out, I directly asked him, about his relationship with the coaches, and he gave a great answer about his relationship with McCullough and Freeman and Chad Bowden and whatever, right? But the rest of the interview was all about how Notre Dame can set him up for what he wants to do moving forward, and how he fits in the offense, and how he does this and how he does that. And it wasn't just the relationship with the coaches, it was Notre Dame. And he just does not strike me as the type of kid that is going to be willy-nilly changing his decision because his position coach is leaving. I think he's got a faith in Notre Dame that they're going to bring in somebody that was going to coach him up and coach him the way he wants to be coached and all of those different things. And so not once did I get a vibe to where I, speaking with him, I was like, oh boy, if McCullough leaves, Notre Dame's going to be in trouble. Like, he sounded to me, or at least he said all the right things, that he's committing to Notre Dame. He's not committing to Dylan McCullough.
Agree. Not to that degree where it would just immediately make him
right. Like that's the only reason that he's coming to Notre Dame. Doesn't matter,
because we're not trying to downplay the role Dylan McCullough had.
No,
it's just when you do the job the right way, you're not just selling me.
Exactly.
The relationship is important, but you're selling the institution, the program, and Marcus Freeman's vision. And if you're not selling Marcus Freeman as an assistant coach, you're not doing it right. In my opinion,
right.
Doesn't mean that your relationship's not important either, but you always got to sell the boss.
Right. From Brandon Plensner, do you think the staff will prioritize and push for Cooper Perry? I can't understand why they wouldn't, because he's excellent.
I tend to agree with you, Brandon. I don't think that it's that they're not pushing for him just yet. I think they're still trying to determine who they definitely want to push for. I'm very confident in saying they want Taylon Taylor. I'm very confident in saying they want Derek Meadows. After that, it's a lot of really good players that they like, and I think they're trying to figure out, who that's going to be and who's the best fit for what we want and what we need. So it's not that I don't think they're not prioritizing him. I think they do like him. I don't think they're pushing for a lot of receivers right now outside of Taylon Taylor and Derek Meadows. I really don't. And I think it depends on, okay, well, do you get those two guys? Do you get one of those two guys? And then that's going to help kind of determine, well, what are our remaining needs at receiver in this class? And I think that's kind of a part of it. But I do think they like Cooper Perry quite a bit. I just don't think they're in a position yet where they're ready to really push for a lot of guys. I think they're still working through the board because it is, like I said, it is early. I'm okay if you're really sold on the kid taking him, but I'm also okay if you want to say, hey, I want to see some junior film of these kids first. I'm okay with that too.
Right.
We have a question kind of about that we'll get to here in a little bit too, Vince.
Okay. From T Guns, I thought big-time running backs didn't want to come to Notre Dame with all this pesky academic standards and ugly girls and terrible weather 13 months out of the year. Oh, and because they don't wear Nike.
It is funny, man. Like, just all the reasons that people come up with. But that was the funny thing is, this is why I get so annoyed with some Notre Dame fans. And it's true at every fan base. But you got those people who just refuse to admit that the problem is us, like as a school. And it was that way when Autry Denson was here. And there's just there's a group of very vocal Notre Dame fans who just would get so pissed at me when I would criticize the job he was doing. And I get it. He's a alum and all that, but I don't care. That's my job isn't to protect you because you're an alum. My job is to give you an honest assessment of the job you're doing. And then when we would kind of have engagements with him and from a recruiting standpoint, you're just like, this guy just does not care about recruiting. He doesn't like to do it. We had this one kid, and I'm all for him. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I believe very much in the word of God. But like this one kid was like, I've never really talked to him. He only just sends me like Bible verses every day. Well, those Bible verses mean nothing if there's no relationship behind
right, exactly.
them. And it just didn't put in the work. And so, of course, running back recruiting struggles. They decide to not take A.J. Dillon, instead take C.J. Holmes. And it's just like, really? And the response was always, well, big-time running backs just don't want to come to Notre Dame. I'm like, so was like Tony Alford just some like grand wit, like this wonder, like this powerful wizard, like, Merlin of our current era, and just like put voodoo on kids. So he made Josh Adams and Torian Folston and Greg Bryant and Dexter Williams and, all the Sear Wood and Theo Riddick. And remember Cam Roberson? He was a top 200 back before his injury. So he was able to do that. But all of a sudden, like that, the minute he left, top backs didn't want to come to Notre Dame anymore. Right. How about we stop making excuses for people and be willing to call someone out for when they're not doing the job? And then immediately when he's hired, the first recruiting class after the first recruiting class after Autry Denson got a job somewhere else, they go get Chris Tyree.
It's the head coach, Brian.
And then follow that up. Just like Everett Withers definitely wanted to leave Ohio State for James Madison, right? And then the year after they get Chris Tyree, they get Audric Estime and Logan Diggs. And then the next year they get Jadarian. So just magically running backs decided as a group they wanted to play at Notre Dame again. just like that.
Right. Just that nationally, they all decide, hey, Notre Dame's back on the table, everybody.
Right. And it's like, no, they've always wanted to be there. It's just like receivers. Well, it's hard to recruit receivers in Notre Dame. It's hard for me to get really talented receivers to come here because academics. I've been told that before. So Chancey Stuckey doesn't have to care about that anymore, or were those kids always willing to come here and you just weren't willing to do the work? And it's that way over all there are some positions where it is harder to recruit in Notre Dame. There's no question about it. And as good of a job as Mike Mickens is doing, he's not getting elite 5-star kids. He's finding talent that isn't ranked that high. They don't have the same attitude. So you've got to do that. So it just was hilarious when you'd hear that stuff, man. It's just like, no, the problem isn't Notre Dame. The problem is you. That's the reality of it. The problem is you. And the running back one was always hilarious to me, Vince. Just get tired of excuses, man. That's what I get sick of. I just get tired of excuses.
And these are some classics right here.
Yeah.
These are some classic excuses. Andrew Burke, Brian, as a former coach, if you were the head coach at Notre Dame, how would you structure practice based on what you've seen? What would you change about Notre Dame's current practice habits?
Andrew, it's really impossible for me to have an answer to that because we've only seen one full practice, and it was the first day of fall camp. I didn't have they cut first day a little short.
Okay, I think.
Right.
Or whatever.
But we've seen the first 5 periods, and I don't have a problem with it. I'd say the only thing I would maybe, if I had to be critical of something, Vince, sometimes there's a little bit too much like standing around during the first 5 periods at times in certain position groups. But even then, that's me looking for something to be critical of.
Sure.
It's just impossible to only see 5 periods, which are mostly warm up and individual, and have an opinion on how they go about practice. Yeah.
And that's, from a reporter standpoint, I would love if they push special teams past the first 5 periods. But at the same time, like, I get it. I mean, they do the same thing every time. So it's not like it's any different. And the way practice has been put together, from what I can tell, from the way it used to be put together, I like it better. I will say that. I do think it's a little bit more up tempo. I think they get to things, a little quicker and a little bit more high energy. I like a little bit more competition. I think they do that. So, I think it's moving in the right direction from where it was. But you know what? Practice is a nuanced thing, man. And it's all about what you want to get accomplished and how you want to accomplish it and all of those different things. So I like the way it's at right now, but there's always room for improvement. How about that?
Absolutely.
Mark Avalone. Let's see here.
I'm sorry. I got to interrupt this real quick. I'm sorry, Vince, but every time Mark says a question, I immediately kind of chuckle because I think of that scene from Don't Mess with Zohan, or with Adam Sandler.
I know the movie you're talking
remember
about.
the one hairstyle, the Avalone, that was the one hairstyle
Definitely don't remember that.
So I'm sorry, Mark. But if you ever see me smirk or smile when your questions are being answered, it's not you, man. It's just, I think of that stupid movie with Adam Sandler. Because he's got a lot of stupid movies, but they're just like stupid funny. I mean that in a good way.
They're not meant to be anything else but stupid funny.
Right. Yeah. And so I mean it in a good way, I guess. I should. It's really just silly, but they're funny. And that was an example of one. It's just really inappropriate in some ways, but just silly and funny. But I'm sorry, Mark. I digress. Let's get back on track.
With good assistant coaches usually being in demand and changing jobs, teams, how do recruits who establish close relationships approach the fact that the great coach will be gone before they arrive or graduate?
Don't make a decision because of the assistant coach. Exactly. I mean, that's really it. And that's kind of, and Mark asked this question before we answered the other question.
Okay.
Because we kind of already answered a little bit in that you sell other things. You sell the head coach, you sell the vision, you sell
the school,
what the academic, there you go.
The environment.
Right.
We've gone on a couple college visits, for example, for my kid, and it's not about the coaches. And these guys do a good job of selling what there is to sell, right? And a couple of the coaches that we've sat down with have been like, look, I don't care about you as an athlete right now. He's like, I just want to get to know you. I want to get to know, like, what do you want out of college? Like, do you want a small college? Do you want a big college? Do you want, do we have the major that you want? Like, they want to know those things. And then they sell those things when they're giving you a tour or whatever. And that's why you pick a school. You don't pick a school based on the coach. And I realize that's easier said than done because you're developing a relationship with that coach. I get that. But at the end of the day, the school is going to be there long term. And in the coaching world, that's just not the case. I mean, the reality of the person who recruited you being there from the time they started recruiting you until you graduate, that number's got to be slim, man. I mean, sometimes it happens, but more often
in O-line coach is one position where you might actually see that.
Sure.
But yeah, to your point, Vince, you just don't see that a ton.
Right.
You really don't. All right, let's get to the next one here. Somebody said, isn't that Zoolander? No, it wasn't Zoolander.
It was like the Zohan or I can't remember what the name
it was Don't Mess with the Zohan or something like that.
Yeah,
it was
something
Adam
like that.
Sandler. Yeah, but the Avalon was the hairstyle that from the 80s that was in the Paul Mitchell book. It was stupid. I can't believe I actually remember that. I'm kind of embarrassed.
I can't believe you remember that either.
But it's a really funny movie. I think it is.
Chris P. Bacon, do you have any inclination about whether 25 will rank better when it's all said and done than 24 or not? Why or why not? And then I believe he said after that was also he meant to say 23. So I'm not sure.
Do I think that 25 will rank better than 23?
Yeah, I think he clarified a couple chats later. I remember this.
Just wanted to be sure that we were on the same page there. I don't know.
Early in the 25 class.
I don't know. Yeah, they got 3 kids committed now.
Right.
So I does it have a chance to be? Yeah, it's got a chance to be. First of all, I think, and I don't know, Chris, I don't know the specific manner in which you're asking this question. Like, are you asking it from like in the recruiting national rankings or whatever? I don't know, don't care. If you're asking me from the standpoint of my personal rankings, I think the 25 class has a chance to be better than the 23 class, and certainly the 24 class from where my ranking is. But until they get a quarterback in the class, it's going to be hard for me to really say for sure.
Yeah.
But and the reason I say that is because the depth of the class is outstanding. And so that matters, Vince, because like in 23, Notre Dame could miss out on their top few quarterback options and still land a kid like Kenny Minchie.
Right, exactly.
That'd have happened in 24. If they'd have missed on CJ Carr in 24, the drop-off after the first 5, 6, 7 is pretty stark, in my opinion. Where, Kenny Minchie, some people had like around the 14th, 15th quarterback, and you're like, that's a really good quarterback, and that it's like that a lot of positions. It really is, Vince. There's a lot of positions on this football team or in this class nationally right now that you look at and say, boy, you could miss on this guy, and this guy and still get a really good football player. But it's got a chance to be there. It's too early, and there's still some coaches that have to prove themselves and different aspects of it that I need to see. But it's got a chance, much more so than 24 did. 24 had a chance to be better than 23, but they would have had to hit the inside straight, basically. And early on, it looked like they just might do that. But that's why it's I'm trying to pump the brakes a little bit on it, just because so much is going to happen.
Right.
And
exactly.
How will the season impact that class?
I mean, these kids aren't going to sign for 2.5 years.
It's crazy.
It's a long time between now and signing day for the 25 class, Brian.
Really crazy. It really is. It really is. So, man, let's get to the next one because long time.
Yeah, I know, right? Mr. 2.0, who are 3, give or take, 24 kids that Notre Dame could suddenly be in on more seriously if they had a 12-0 season? I'm guessing one is Carter Nelson.
Maybe. Honestly, if you get a second tight end committed to you in 25, okay. Carter, you wanted to go to Nebraska, go to Nebraska. Now, I don't say that in a negative way. Just be like, hey, man, that's where you wanted to go. It's all good. Go do it. Justin Scott, sure. Caleb Beasley. Maybe a receiver. Maybe. But honestly, guys, like there's not a lot.
Right.
Because and here's what it comes down to, Vince. You have to understand that Notre Dame doesn't view some of these commits the way that you all do. Meaning, like, they don't think they need to get back in with some other defensive ends. They liked Elijah Rushing a lot, but they were completely fine passing on McKelty Williams once they got Logan Thomas.
Right.
Because they like him better. So they're not going to get back in on guys. They like Micah Gilbert a lot more than some of you do. They like Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams a lot better than some of you do. They like Sean Silviano better than some of us do, including myself. They like Bodie Cahoon better than some of us do. So there's a lot of positions where say, I think they're okay there. Now, maybe there's a safety out there that they could get in on if they have a better year. That'd be a position where I would be very curious of. I don't know who that would be because a lot of the top safeties that they wanted weren't all that. I mean, DeJuan Lane showed very little interest in Notre Dame. Jalen McClain did early and then just kind of just fell out with them. So I don't know who that would be, but safety would be the only non-obvious position where I would kind of have that opinion, Vince.
Makes sense. I mean, there's just not a lot of room left in the class. I mean, there's guys that would be an obvious take, but yeah, that's kind of sailed away, that ship. All right, Andrew Gilmore, who does Rudolph need to keep happy if that person doesn't start? A lot of talented backups. I don't want them to pull a Jacob Lacey and leave before game 4.
If I got to convince you not to quit on your team after 4 games, then I don't want you on my team.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously. Yeah. I don't need to go a whole lot deeper into that. Yes, you want to make sure your kids understand they're valued. You want to make sure that you've laid out the future. I'm a big fan of once you kind of establish your depth chart, you sit down and you're going to have kids go on scout team. I'm a believer. You sit down with them, you tell them this is what the expectations are. You don't just forget about them for a whole year like Notre Dame's coaches have had a bad habit of doing in the past.
Right.
But I'm not playing a kid who I don't think can help me beat NC State just because I don't want him to leave. Like Jacob Lacey didn't play a lot against North Carolina because they didn't feel his style of play gave them a chance to win that game. I don't agree with it, but it wasn't a personal thing. And if they didn't think he could help them win, they shouldn't have played him more to keep him there. They weren't willing to promise him a starting job next year like he wanted. They weren't willing to redshirt him because here's the thing. Jacob Lacey was a key part of the Notre Dame defensive line rotation.
No doubt.
So it's not like he was sitting on the bench doing nothing. He was a game off of a 2-sack game. He wanted to be the guy. He wanted to play a lot more than he already was. And I don't say this as an ill will towards Jay. I mean, whatever. He's got to do what's best for him. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. But if I gotta do special things to make you not leave, to keep you happy, then leave.
That's the best.
I'm not saying you forget about kids or ignore kids. I mean,
coaches
always do that. You always coach them up.
Yeah.
You make them feel valued. But I'm not going out of my way to play a kid on the offensive line that I don't think can help me win just because I don't want him to leave after 4 games. If he's that close to not wanting to be here, then maybe he should go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you use that scholarship in the 25 class or something like that.
Someone
who really wants to be here.
Sometimes addition by subtraction is not a bad thing. And that's nothing against Jacob Lacey as a person. That's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is that if he doesn't want to be there, you're better off if he's not there. And I've had to not have kids on my team for that exact reason. Look, athletically, they make us better. But if they don't want to be there, or if they're, again, this isn't about Jacob, this is in the general sense. If they're not fitting into what I want as a team and they don't want to be there, then it's okay to part ways, but it's also my job as the coach to make sure that my entire roster is being coached at all times. I mean, that's my job. That's why I'm getting paid the big bucks. Right. Correct. So, yeah. So that's how I feel about that whole thing. I mean, it's, him sticking around just to stick around isn't worth it. Go do something else, man. That's fine.
Agree. Now, if a kid leaves early because I'm not engaging with him or not teaching him or not coaching him like we saw at receiver, that's a coaching problem.
Right.
But if I got to kind of go out of my way to play a kid so he doesn't leave, then, best of luck to you, bro.
Yeah, right. Exactly. D-Troll Hunter, Brian, what is different about Florida in 25 that we are suddenly able to crack open the door?
Well, I don't think either one of the Florida kids they got are lifelong Florida kids. I think they've both moved to Florida.
That's
true. I
think
that's part of it. And both when they committed to Notre Dame went to really good private schools, Catholic Jesuit private schools. That factors into the conversation as well.
Right. Oh, speaking of 25 kids, Brian, it's only a year and a half before those kids sign, not 2.5 years. Matt, I'm a gym teacher.
I knew what
Matt's
you meant.
Not my strong suit.
I knew what you meant.
Year and a half still a long ways away. All right.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. All good, buddy. All good.
Crispy bacon. Statistically, do we sustain more injuries versus Navy than other teams, or is this simply a misnomer? Notre Dame hasn't sustained a bunch of injuries. Yeah,
They did
not
used
recently.
to.
Right.
There was a time like late in Coach Weiss's tenure, but I also remember like early in Brian Kelly's tenure where it seemed like every game there was a couple dudes getting carted off the field.
That was the thing. Yeah.
You got to remember in recent years, they've gotten rid of a lot of the cut blocking, especially on the perimeter. You can't cut block on the perimeter the way you used to. And so the rule changes have kind of eliminated that to a degree. You just can't like cut a guy from behind like you could 10 years ago. Right, Vince? And so I think that's factored into it as well.
Yep, absolutely.
But also Notre Dame's just a better program. They're better. They're coached better. Look, best way to not get injured against Navy is make sure your kids know how to defeat a cut block.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hurt me if you can't cut me.
Right.
And
that's one of those things, Brian, that it's a misnomer, I would say, because I'll use Crispy Bacon's word. It's a misnomer only because it used to be true, but it's not true now. It's kind of like the whole green jersey thing. Like, remember, it used to be, they can't win in green jersey. They haven't lost in green jerseys in like 15 years. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that kind of a thing. It got so ingrained in people's mind. Injuries versus Navy, green jerseys, can't win in them. Like, that's just right here, even though the reality is that's just not true anymore.
Yeah, because I actually have this. So I went yesterday and I did a thing where I put Notre Dame's record against when they're wearing an alternate uniform.
Oh, okay.
Since the Brian Kelly era. And the only game Notre Dame lost and I might be forgetting a game, but I don't believe that I am. The only game that Notre Dame lost, you know what? I did forget a game. I forgot 2011 Michigan.
Oh, on the road.
The only two games.
I love those uniforms, by the way.
They were awesome.
They're so sweet.
So Notre Dame, since 2010, all the alternate uniform games and green jersey games. So since Brian Kelly arrived, they have worn green jerseys 6 times. They're 6-0. The closest game they had was Cal last year in BC 1916 against Fenway. They beat Florida State 42-13, Navy 44-6, Maryland 45-21, and Army 27-3. Then they wore alternate uniforms. Last year, they beat BYU 28-20. The year before that, they beat Wisconsin 41-13. 2 years before that, they beat BC 40-7. The year before that, they beat Clemson 36-3. 2017, they beat Navy 24-17. 2014, they beat Purdue 30-14. Beat Arizona State in 13, 37-34. And then in 2012, they beat Miami 41-3 in an alternate uniform. The two losses were 2011 to Michigan.
Yeah.
And then 2018 playoff game to Clemson. And and that's even questionable if you want to call that an alternate uniform. The only thing that was alternate was the gloves and the cleats.
Yeah.
Remember they wore the green gloves and cleats? They still wore the same uniform. And so that's even stretching it if you even want to include that.
Yeah, I don't know if I would include that. Definitely the Michigan game.
The uniform was the same. They just wore different gloves and cleats.
Right.
But yes, definitely Michigan.
Definitely Michigan. And those, I love those throwback, like Adidas did a good job with the throwback quote unquote uniforms. Like those were clean. They were awesome. It's just too bad they didn't win in them, obviously, but those uniforms were sweet.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The jersey thing is because it brings up bad memories, right?
Sure.
People that say that are still holding on to the 0-2 game against BC and still thinking about the USC game in 05. But here's the thing about the 05 USC game. Notre Dame played out of their minds that game.
You're right. They played great.
I mean, the 0-2 BC game. And then there was like the 07 green jersey game against USC.
That did not go well.
But it's kind of like that team was terrible.
Right.
Right? Like,
it had nothing to do with the jersey.
To USC.
It had nothing to do with the jersey.
Nothing.
It had to do with their starting quarterback, the whole team. Like, it was just a bad...
Look at you taking shots at starting quarterback of that team. You mean?
I know that was wrong. I apologize.
No, it wasn't. It was so right.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I got a super chat here from that one guy, 15. Trayvon Henderson at OSU carted off at practice. And I believe in the chat they kind of put this one to bed that they haven't even started practice yet. So
yeah. I was going to ask about that one, Vince, because I don't think they start till like
Thursday. According to Archer, they don't start till Thursday.
Now, that doesn't mean that he wasn't injured in a workout.
But Archer said he went on all the boards and all the sites, and there's no mention of it. So it feels like that might not be the case.
And but I hope it's not the case.
I want Ohio State to be full go.
Well, the other thing too is I like Travion Henderson. I mean, this is a kid that Vince, as a high school senior, was like a 4.0 student, outstanding and just really involved in the community, all that stuff. I don't ever want to see any kid really get injured.
Yeah, right.
But and he's from Virginia. I mean, we got to stick together, man. You know what I mean? So I certainly hope that's not true. And he's now saying that he read the tweet wrong. But
okay.
I don't ever want that to be the case. Never be the case.
Let's see here. Sparkling Swan, thank you very much for the super chat. Don't know if this was spoken about, but how you both feeling about the Under Armour deal? I mean, it's not official yet, number one. But the reports are that they're going to re-up with Under Armour. And I feel the same way today that I felt about it yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that. I don't care. I will say that I have empirical evidence that shoes / cleats are an issue.
That's
and I'm not just talking about football. I'm talking about basketball, etc.
And track.
It needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed. But other than that, cool, man. Like, okay, cool. It's going to be the according to the reports, it's going to be the richest contract in the country for an apparel deal. So you can check that box off. Jack Swarbrick said they wanted to be a priority for that. Okay, check that box off. Obviously, they are making commitments to give even more gear and more stuff and more this and more. Like, they checked all the boxes, man. And it's not like they picked Under Armour just to piss everybody off. Okay,
right.
Like, I want to make sure everybody understands that,
or because Jack Swarbrick's kid works there,
right?
Like,
it's just that's not the way it went down. It was a business decision. They had the best offer. And so they took it. And it's not all about the money either. It's the things I mentioned before. But they need to address the shoe thing. That needs to be addressed.
I don't think the issues with Nike are completely out of Notre Dame's. This is just reading between the lines of conversations I've had. I don't think it was a driving factor, but it was not ignored by Notre Dame either. But it really came down to primarily money. Sure. And that's what all these deals come down to. If Adidas came in and offered Ohio State when their next deal is up, the difference in money that Notre Dame currently, from what I'm told, got between Nike and Under Armour, and again, this could end up being not accurate. I mean, again, this is what I was told by some sources, and why I've felt for a while that Under Armour is eventually going to be the deal. If Adidas came in and said, "Hey, we're going to offer you, X 20, 30, $40 million more to sign with us than Nike," I guarantee Ohio State would bail on Nike, because that's what it's about. It's about
absolutely
the apparel deal. It's about money.
Tyler Evans, thanks for the super chat. Is there a team this upcoming season that's going to have a rude awakening?
Ooh, that's a good.
I would hope we get a rude awakening, but I can't really say that they will.
Yeah, there's several events that I think could end up having a rude awakening. I'll kind of go quickly by conference. So ACC, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know that there's a team there that I would necessarily say that for sure about. Although there are some teams in the middle of that pack that if they don't make some changes could find themselves being buried really quickly. But I wouldn't necessarily go there. I think Cincinnati is in for a rude awakening this season.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that they lost Luke Fickell and all the recruiters, they've had a lot of talent depleted from their roster that they haven't been able to replenish the same way. You're, like you said, Vince, you're going to the Big 12. I think that's my pick for a team that's in for a rude awakening in the Big 12.
Even when they went to the playoff with all the talent that they had and the coaching that they had, remember down the stretch. So after they beat Notre Dame, obviously we were all watching Cincinnati and we were all paying very close attention to Cincinnati. Remember how many of those games against the conference that they were in came down to like the fourth quarter, the last second. I mean, a fumble here, an interception.
Barely beat Navy.
Yeah, I mean,
barely beat Tulsa. They were playing like crap against Tulane in the first half.
Yes, absolutely. And they had all that talent too.
Right.
So now they don't have that talent. They got a new coaching staff, and they're going to a Power 5 conference. Like,
right.
You're right. I think that's going to be an interesting scenario.
They're in for a rude awakening, in my opinion, no doubt. Let's see. Big Ten. This is an interesting one. Well, Northwestern.
Well, I don't know that'll be a rude awakening, though.
Purdue is my pick in the Big Ten. Purdue is it's going to be a rough year. I've heard I don't know much about Ryan Walters, their new head coach. And if everything I hear about him is true, he's going to do well there. He's just walking in at the exact wrong time. They lost a lot of players. Jeff Brom did not do a great job recruiting down the stretch. And they were built to run a program a certain way that's completely different than what I think Ryan Walters wants to do. I mean, he's going to be doing some air raid stuff, but it's just going to be, you know, I believe he hired Graham Harrell to be his offensive coordinator. That guy struggled to put a great offense on the field with at USC with USC's talent.
That's true.
And then Purdue this year has to play Fresno in the opener. They play at Virginia Tech and home against Syracuse. That's a nutty out of conference schedule right there. Like, no, your group of 5 is Fresno. Then they play Wisconsin, Illinois at home, at Iowa, home against Ohio State, at Nebraska, at Michigan, home against Minnesota, at Northwestern, home against Indiana. So November's a little easier after Michigan, sort of. But by that point in time, who knows what they're going to be? I think Purdue's in for a rude awakening this year. They're going to. I think they're going to struggle. And the transition is going to be hard on them.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think Wisconsin's going to. A lot of people think Wisconsin's going to be, really, really good, win that division, et cetera, et cetera. I think the media picked them to win the division.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turnover going on there with the kind of offense that they want to run and all that. I just don't feel like that's going to be the smoothest of transitions. In other words, is that going to translate into a bunch of wins in year one?
Yeah.
I don't know that I see that. And so if Wisconsin fans are like, hey, man, it's the Big Ten championship or bust, that could be a rude awakening.
I'm going to say this, Vince, about the Big 12. I mean, the Pac-12. Because it's going to come across as I'm a hater on Deion. And I think you know that I am not. I want Deion to be successful there. But I think there's a lot of Colorado fans that are thinking they're going to be a lot better than they actually are going to be this year.
Instantly better with the
Correct.
75% turnover on your roster or whatever it is.
They're and here's the other thing too. That schedule is brutal. So there's a few things working against Deion in 2023. Number one, the roster inherited was worthless. I mean, it was a bad group of 5 roster, Vince.
Which is really pathetic, by the way.
It really is.
And I will also say, with all the media that has been going on surrounding Deion and the whole thing, right? And they're following him around. Their facilities are really nice.
Yeah.
Like their strength conditioning, like their facilities,
and it's a beautiful area.
Yeah,
I mean,
how can you not sell that to kids?
My wife and I drove by their stadium all the time on our way up to Estes Park. We drive through Boulder on the highway. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's just
get it. That's just
it's because you didn't prioritize it and you had hired people that weren't good. But you look at like last year, they played their non-conference games last year. They got killed. They got killed by TCU. Air Force beat them 41-10. Minnesota beat them 49-7.
Wow.
I mean, they have a terrible, terrible roster, and people just think they're going to they added a couple 5 stars. So those 5 stars were not added with a bunch of other great players,
right?
And their schedule this year is brutal. That's the other part of it. So you've got to play at TCU, home against Nebraska, home against Colorado State. And that's not going to be necessarily Colorado State's not great, but they play Colorado tough for whatever reason. They play Colorado tough, even though they're not very good.
That's their big rival game, though.
Yeah. Then so hopefully they win that one. Then they got to play at Oregon, home against USC, at Arizona State, home against Stanford, at UCLA, home against Oregon State, home against Arizona, at Washington State, at Utah.
That's tough.
There aren't a lot of non-conference gimmies to help them get some dubs, right? I mean,
if he goes 500 this year, that's a hell of a
If
job.
he goes 500 or better this year, he should literally be a finalist for the Coach of the Year award.
Agreed.
I'm dead serious.
No, I'm dead serious.
That's why I'm not saying I'm not an anti. I want Deion to be successful. You know me, Vince. I'm all for non-big time programs getting better because it helps to kind of I'm not a fan of forced parity. I hate forced parity. I like when parity becomes because so many different schools are doing what they need to do, and there's just a lot of good situations going on. That's kind of parity I like. Not parity comes from salary caps and all this other kind of bull crap, right? Not a big fan of that. If you don't want to work hard, then you shouldn't have, then you don't get rewarded by getting the number 1 overall draft pick, right? I don't. That's one of the issues I have with professional sports is the forced parity. I understand it. I just don't like it as much.
Sure.
And so I want Coach Sanders to be successful. I do. I didn't like him as a player, but I've gotten to know him, not know him personally, but like know him from talking to people and reading stories about the kind of things he wants to do. Yes, he's kind of self-absorbed in a lot of ways. He's always been that way, but he's self-absorbed in a look at me kind of way. He's not self-absorbed from the standpoint of the impact he's trying to make in people's lives, right? And he's always been that way.
Yeah.
So I would like to see Deion be successful for a host of reasons, but he's just not going to be this year. And if they are, that's a great coaching job. Like, if he goes 6-6, you'll have some people in the media saying, well, it looks like the Deion Sanders experiment's not working out so well.
No.
Like, no, if Deion, honestly, Vince, if he goes 4-8, that's a pretty good coaching job this year. I mean, honestly. But the Colorado fans are in for a rude awakening because, like, they're selling out season tickets and they're all excited about their team. And I'm like, ooh, it's going to be a rough year for y'all. Big 12, that's a tougher one. The Big 12, or I mean, SEC, I mean.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who my pick is going to be.
Have we done the Big 12 yet? We just did
Cincinnati. Yeah, okay. We did Cincinnati. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who my rude awakening is going to be. Maybe, Florida. They could be in for a rough year.
Yeah.
Maybe Missouri. Maybe. The SEC West. I just don't know enough about what Mississippi State has coming back and to know if they're, but that could be tough. Not having Mike Leach and then you're moving away from the air raid and some other things. I think but I just don't know enough about them to confidently say they're going to be one of those teams, if that makes sense, Vince.
Okay.
So yeah, those are my picks.
Yeah,
those are my picks.
I don't really have a better one for the SEC, that's for sure. But there's plenty of teams out there that I would love to have a rude awakening. Like
that's a fun one, Vince. Who would you like to have a rude awakening? Let's go conference by conference.
Okay,
Give me one team that you want to see just fall flat on their face this year. Tell me why. Tell me why.
Can I jump? This is literally a first-class ticket on the Petty train. So
yeah, it's all good.
It's all good. Okay. All right.
So let's go ACC first. Let's go ACC first.
I'm not going to say Clemson because I want Clemson to have a good season because I want Notre Dame's win over them to mean something. Okay. So I'm not going to say Clemson. ACC, there's nobody. Florida State, I suppose. I
want Florida State to be good. I do because I think it's good. Like when Florida State starts getting more 5-star recruits. They're not taking them from Notre Dame. They're taking them from Bama,
absolutely.
Georgia.
Good call.
I got one for you, Vince. And as soon as I say it, you're going to be like, yep.
Somebody put Pitt, and I think
Bingo.
That's a great one. Yeah.
Yes, because I can't stand Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah.
I've never liked Pitt for a lot of reasons, but Pat Narduzzi makes it really easy not to.
The one thing I like about Pitt is their recent change in their color scheme.
Gone back to the old school. I love their old. I love going back to the old school colors.
I do. Yeah. I really like their look right now. That's the only thing I like about Pitt. So they were easy to hate when they had those gross uniforms that they were wearing, like when Larry Fitzgerald was there, you know what I mean? Like that was just it was gross. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Pitt for ACC. I like that one a lot. What's next?
Let's go Big 12.
Texas all day long. I know it falls under the category of when Texas is good, college football is good. Like I get
don't
that to a
necessarily
degree,
agree with that, but yeah.
But there's something about their QB that rubs me the wrong way. There's just I don't know. I'm just not a Texas fan, and there's a lot of bandwagon Texas fans out there that bug me. So Texas is my choice.
Oklahoma's my pick, Vince, because I agree with a lot of what you said. I like Steve Sarkisian, number one. And I've never disliked Texas. Okay. I've disliked some of the hype around Texas, but I've never had this. I've never liked Oklahoma. Going back to when I was a kid, Barry Switzer just rubbed me the wrong way. Brian Bosworth annoyed the crap out of me. I've never been like. Now I like who Brian Bosworth has become.
Sure. Yes.
But I didn't like who he was then.
The 30 for 30 that they did on him, I thought was really
excellent.
Really good.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, he's in Christian movies that I'm watching. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
right.
and he owns who he was. Like the tears he had when his kid lifted up that shirt that he wore that got him in trouble at the bowl game.
Yeah.
He was like, don't. That's not something to be proud of. Like he was like, you could see just the hurt in his eyes, like the missed opportunity he had of what he risked just to be a knucklehead, you know. And and I respect the heck out of that. Right? He doesn't try to like whitewash his past or glorify. He's like, man, I don't like that I was that guy. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I didn't like him then. The only thing that remotely made me like Oklahoma at all was Jamel Holloway. I just liked watching him play quarterback. He was an option wizard, man. But I disliked Oklahoma. I then started to like him more as I got older because I really liked Bob Stoops. But then when he left, it's just kind of like I don't like Lincoln Riley a whole lot. But I love him compared to my feelings for Brent Venables since he's become head coach.
Yeah.
The just dumb
cringeworthy
things that this guy says are just like, what are you talking about? And just the lack of self-awareness that he has, like taking shots at Miami for the fact they got beat by Middle Tennessee State last year. And what was like Florida State beat him like 45-3. And he was making a comment, we went 6-7, but at least we didn't blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Miami went like what, 5-7?
Yeah.
Right? Like, bro, you weren't that far away.
Right.
And with all due respect, you have your success last year. You have no right to have a negative comment towards anybody.
Right.
You lost to Texas 49-0. You lost to Texas Tech. You lost to freaking West Virginia, and you lost to Baylor at home because you need to shut your pie hole right now and worry about your team. I can't stand coaches who take shots at other teams, especially when you're not even good. And his whole stuff about, his committed players. And I'm like, then why do you keep trying to flip everybody else's committed players if this is something you believe in? Like, you are a first-class hypocrite who says really weird, cringy things.
Yeah,
his fire hose comment was like, what?
Yeah, he was a good coordinator when people weren't sticking a microphone in his face.
Correct.
Like, he needs to be behind the scenes just doing football stuff because he's a terrible interview because he only says stuff where he puts his foot in his mouth. He sounds like an idiot, and he's making his program look like an idiot. And his head coaching style does not translate to wins at this point. And I don't know that the Oklahoma, maybe Oklahoma, I don't know enough Oklahoma fans, right? Is their fan base delusional enough to think that he's going to be successful?
Well, they're also just kind of, I only know the Oklahoma fans on social media. And so this is a really unfair way of because like there's some Notre Dame fans on social media that I'm like, block. I put it like I've blocked more Notre Dame fans on Twitter than I've blocked LSU fans, right? If that tells you anything.
That's fair.
But on a percentage basis, it's much higher because LSU fans are just strange. Although I did have one LSU fan hit me up on DM the other day, and he was very respectful, and we had a conversation. It was really cool. But we obviously have had a couple in here. But Oklahoma fans that I've engaged with are just not. I don't like them very much. But it's more so about Brent Venables. Honestly, for me,
I just don't see Brent Venables making it after this year. I think this is his last year.
If they don't turn it around quick. I mean, the one good thing he has going for him is the schedule sets up nicely. They start off with Arkansas State and SMU at home. Should win those. They play at Tulsa, at Cincinnati. At worst, you're 3-1 there.
Sure.
Then you've got Iowa State at home, so there's a chance you're 5-0, and you haven't really beat anybody yet. Then you play Texas in the neutral field. Then you Central Florida at home. At Kansas, at Oklahoma State, home against West Virginia, at BYU, home against TCU. So, like, there's no Texas Tech on there. There's no Baylor on there. There's some good teams that you're not having to play because the conference is bigger this year. So, the schedule's a little bit easy, more man. I would say easy because when you got to play Texas away, on a neutral field, and you've got to play UCF, and you've got to play at Oklahoma State, at Kansas, at BYU, and home against TCU, your schedule isn't easy. It's just a little more manageable. I think it's probably a more objective.
There's plenty of road bumps for him, though. How about that? There's plenty of speed bumps for him to screw something up or say something stupid, and that's going to happen. He's going to be a soundbite this year.
I'm going to say we're going to move to the Big Ten next, but you're not allowed to pick Michigan because that's a given.
That's messed up.
who's the non-Michigan team? Because that's a given. We already know who that would be. Who's the non-Michigan team that you would like to see fall flat on their face this season?
Minnesota.
Good one, right? Minnesota. Yeah, I know exactly why.
Not a
PJ
fan
Fleck?
of. Yeah, not a fan of PJ Fleck. Yeah, I don't. I want Michigan. It's like people saying MSU. I like Michigan State. I want them to be successful. I want Purdue to be successful. I want IU to be successful.
Yeah.
I have no problem with any of those.
Yeah.
I really don't. So it would be Minnesota. Like I think Wisconsin's going to have a rude awakening. So I can't pick them. Obviously, I just have no love for Minnesota, man. None.
Yep, I agree. Okay, let's go to the Pac-12.
I'm not going to pick anybody on Notre Dame's schedule, so I'm not picking USC.
Who do you want to fall flat on their face? I know who mine is.
Okay, go ahead.
And a lot you'll notice some themes with who I want to fall flat on their face. It's Oregon. Dan Lanning annoys the mess out of me. So I just something about that guy I do not like, man. I don't know. I mean, as a coach, right? He may be the greatest human being on the planet. I don't know. I'm talking about as a coach. I just dislike him, and the way they're going about the NIL stuff just really bothers me. So I'd love for them to fall flat on their face and for Jonathan Smith to hang 50 on them this year. That's what I would love to happen. I would love to see DJ Uiagalelei. I did it right. Did I do it right?
Yeah, you did.
I'd love to see him have like a 380-yard game and they just light Oregon on fire. And there's no Bo Nix hate because, as you know, I like Bo Nix. I just dislike Dan Lanning a whole lot more than I like Bo Nix.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with Arizona State because I kind of want Drew Pine to be successful. I have no ill will towards that kid. I want him to be successful. I like Kenny
Dillingham. He's done a nice job. Yeah,
I don't have a whole lot of negative thoughts towards the Pac-10, 12, whatever they are these days. Pac-9 in a year. I have no ill will towards a lot of those teams. I really don't. Is it wrong that I kind of want the Utah offense to struggle a little bit?
Why?
Just because of everything that went down.
That's not Andy Lobo's fault.
I know it's not his fault, but I still want him to struggle. I don't know.
I don't. Okay. I like Kyle Whittingham.
I still want him to win. I still want him to win. So
no, because if their offense struggles, they're not going to win.
That's true. No, that's a good point. I almost feel like I want Jared Parker to be the right choice. Like, hey, we ended up making the right decision anyway, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, look, I don't care if Utah lights the world on fire this year, and so does Notre Dame, then it's going to be the right decision. I mean,
that's true.
And if Utah struggles this year on offense, and so does Notre Dame, it's not going to. Well, at least we don't have Andy Ludwig, the guy that's won back-to-back Pac-12 times.
Right.
Look, I want that answer to be, first of all, I can't stand that revisionist stuff. Even if it ends up being a great hire, it doesn't change that Notre Dame's admin dropped the ball on that process
so badly.
And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Now, I hope it still works out. I like Jared Parker. I think he's going to do very well. But that doesn't change the process being flawed.
Yeah.
It'll just say that Marcus Freeman rescued them from themselves.
Right.
Is basically what I mean. But that's going to be determined by what Jared Parker does, no matter what Utah does. Yeah. I hope they're both successful, to be honest with you. And then last one, Vince, is the SEC, and it's hard to only pick one.
You're not kidding.
My pick is not LSU. It's not.
Oh, it's definitely mine.
Yeah, it's not. Mine's not LSU.
Okay.
Not that I'd have a problem with it, but the petty part of me wants to pick LSU just because, not even because of Brian Kelly, just because how obnoxious their fans are. But for me, it's still Texas A&M. Like it's because it's A&M or Auburn or one of the two for me. Here's the problem: is as much as I dislike Brian Kelly, there are way douchier coaches in the SEC than Brian Kelly. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz. I hope that dude goes 0-12. He annoys the heck out of me. Hugh Freeze is just, I dislike him a lot. A&M, I dislike Jimbo a lot. See, to me, the problem is rooting again for LSU to fall flat on their face basically just hoists Bama back up to their spot.
That's true.
And because no one else in the SEC West is going to beat Bama this year for the title. They may get knocked off. Hugh Freeze beat them a couple times, Auburn. But as far as the only team that has a chance to beat them for the SEC West title is LSU. Oof. And I want Bama to be brought down.
I don't want one for the other, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand all that. So I don't
for the other.
Be good enough to give Alabama some damage. I just don't want Alabama's run to the West to just be easy because LSU sucks this year.
Yeah.
I don't want them to win the West or anything, per se, but just, beat them once, and then Georgia can beat them in the SEC title game and they're out of the playoff. Fine. Give me that.
I still want Brian Kelly to be like an 8-9 win team.
Yeah, I get that. That would be great.
I get that.
I dislike Brian Kelly. I don't want him to lose just because.
Yeah.
It's more so the only reason I would root for them to lose is just because how just obnoxious their fans are and the people that cover that team are. That's really what it boils down to.
Also true.
But I there's other people I dislike more.
That was fun.
Yeah. Yep. There's some funny answers in here, Vince. Somebody said Brian's is going to be LSU, so I think I surprise some people.
Oh, mine was definitely
with my answer. But yeah, I dislike Jimbo a lot more than I dislike Brian Kelly.
That's fair.
And that's saying a lot.
That is saying
that's saying a lot, Vince.
Because you and I have had some conversations, okay? Like
Yeah. Yeah, somebody said Vanderbilt. I like Clark.
Oh, not at all.
He's a really good guy.
No, I want them to be successful.
Yeah, agree. Let's wrap up here, Vince. We got a few more questions I want to get to. Here's one along those lines from Andrew Gilmore, kind of along what we just discussed.
Yeah, it says, Brian, do you want Reese to succeed?
Of course.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it's good for Notre Dame if he does. Like, this is what some of y'all have to get out of your own feelings to say, even if you dislike Tommy Reese, him succeeding at Alabama is good for Notre Dame, because anytime Notre Dame coaches leave for other jobs and do well, it makes that Notre Dame job more attractive.
Absolutely.
Hey, Tom Reese did a great job here. He went to Bama, which he did a great job there, and then that vaulted him to the NFL or to a head coaching position or whatever the case may be. I also don't dislike Tommy Reese the way that some fans do. To a degree, I get it, because he's kind of got a little bit of a gruff personality. He's just not a guy trying to win anyone's hearts over with his, outgoing, fun-loving demeanor in public. He's a film junkie like you and I are. It's just he doesn't care about all that other stuff, right?
Right.
Whatever. I didn't always like the things he did offensively. I mean, we've talked about that, but sure. I never had a personal issue with Tommy Reese ever. I've never disliked Tom Reese as a person. I didn't always agree with the job he did. That's true of other people that I'm very fond of as human beings. So I don't want. And look, it was just time. It was just time for him to move on. It was, sure. and sometimes that's okay. Like, he needed to get out from underneath the Notre Dame shadow to kind of become his own man, so to speak, sure. Right? And say, hey, I got to be able to, sink or swim on my own, merits. And I think being under Nick Saban is going to be good for Tommy as a coach. And, so no, do I want him to succeed? Yeah, sure. As long as it's not beating Notre Dame. Yeah, right. Of course. I don't want him to beat Notre Dame in games. I don't want him to beat Notre Dame for recruits. Outside of that.
Exactly. I want him and Tyler Buchner to be successful at Alabama. I've said this before. Excuse me. I just don't want to be. I don't want
a fly or something.
I don't know what that was. I just don't want Notre Dame to be a speed bump on their way to success. Like that. I do not want that at all. If it's head to head, of course I want Notre Dame to be successful. I want them to win. Right. But outside of the Notre Dame effect, I want those guys to be successful. I have no ill will towards either one of those guys, because you know what? You put any one of us in the situation that Tommy Reese was in, most of us are going to take the Alabama job, man. For all of the reasons that you just said, I mean, that is a step up. It's a chance to learn under Nick Saban. I have no problem with that.
And what's also funny is some of the people that were the nastiest to Tommy Reese were the first ones to call him disloyal when he left.
Right. It's not disloyalty, guys. That's not.
That's not even the point. Even if it was disloyal to leave your alma mater, like, some of the abuse he took was like beyond just criticism for a bad play call or a bad game plan. Like, some people just could never let it go. Right. Just like whatever he made this interception as a player or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Like, I don't care about that. I'm not going to dislike Tommy Reese because I didn't think he was a great quarterback. Just like I'm not going to hype up Autry Denson as a coach because he was a really good player.
Right.
The two have nothing to do with each other.
Exactly.
So no, I hope he does well. I hope Logan Diggs does well at LSU. I hope that Quinn Carroll does well at Minnesota. I hope that all those kids perform well. There's very few, and I would never say they are. There's very few where I just have no strong feeling about them being successful because I don't think they did things the right way. But I have no problem with Tyler. Tyler Buchner went through the whole spring and battled his butt off. He lost a job and he wants to start, so he thinks he's that. I just think it speaks volumes that he thinks he's got a better shot starting at Alabama than Notre Dame. I think it speaks volumes.
Yep. Smiling Irish, if they do get Deuce Knight, would the quarterback recruiting sequence of Minchie, Carr, and Knight be their best lineup since 2000?
Man, it's probably, yeah. Because if you look at some of them, like the Jimmy Clausen, Dane Chris back-to-back was really good. But then in 2009, did they even sign anyone in 2009 at quarterback, Vince? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, oh, man, I don't know.
I don't even know that they signed a quarterback in 2009. And then 2006, it was like Zach Frazier and Demetrius Jones, right? I always forget his last name. It's Demetrius Jones, correct? The guy that was quarterback.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2009, yeah, they didn't even sign a quarterback in 2009. And then in 2010, it was like Andrew Hendricks and Luke Massa and Tommy Reese. 11, you got Everett Golson, Gunnar Keel in 12, and then Malik Zaire in 13. I don't view that stretch as being better. The Gunnar Keel, Malik Zaire, Deshaun Kaiser trio wasn't better because I was never as high on Gunnar Keel as other people. And as talented as Malik was, he was very raw.
Sure.
And Deuce is more advanced as a sophomore than Malik was as a senior because Malik played in an option offense. It wasn't necessarily played in an option offense. Then you could look at the 13, Malik, Kaiser, Wimbush is probably the best 3-year stretch they've had, in my opinion, because I liked Wimbush a lot more than I liked. Now, the reason I would give the edge to this group is because I think the Sean Kaiser's ceiling is probably as high as if Deuce doesn't have the highest ceiling, should they get him? And again, we're just dealing with the hypothetical of the question of if they get him.
Right.
He would have the highest ceiling, but Deshaun Kaiser's a close second to me. And Brandon Wimbush had a lot of talent too. Brandon Wimbush got ruined at Notre Dame.
Yes.
Brandon Wimbush is a
I was so high on Brandon Wimbush coming in. So high.
He didn't even throw the ball the same way. His motion was changed. Everything was changed at Notre Dame. And he was really good. CJ Carr has the highest floor of all of them. So I will say this. As passers, definitely this most recent group is better than that group. As just pure passers. Kenny Minchie is a better pure passer than anybody they have, and he's not even as good of a pure passer as CJ Carr, in my opinion. They're close, very close. Those other guys had really high ceilings they were dynamic all-around players, like much more dynamic runners than the current group. So if you're a team that values, if you're someone who values that, then the 13 to 15 trio will be better. I think what Notre Dame wants to be is more of a throwing team, like the quarterback being a thrower, not a all-around guy. Yeah, you want to be able to move and stuff, but you don't need a guy that look, they're not recruiting Deuce Knight and CJ Carr if they want to stiff in the quarterback that never runs. I mean, CJ Carr's a scrambler, Deuce is a scrambler, but they're not the runners those guys were.
Right. They're athletic, but they're not. Right. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Wimbush almost rushed for 1,000 yards at Notre Dame. Right, and he might have got there if he didn't get banged up late in the year and kind of lose it a little bit. He still rushed for over 100 yards and had 14 touchdowns. It's a completely different type of quarterback.
Josh Buffo, he says Sam Hartman is Notre Dame's best QB since. What say you? I'm going to miss the OG shows when school starts.
Me too. I was talking about this with Angela last night. I also will have to say you and Ryan have done some really good shows the last few weeks as well. You guys do really well together, in my opinion.
Thanks, man.
To me, Vince, let's see him play a game at Notre Dame first.
Sure.
You could say statistically it's easy. It's the best quarterback since Brady Quinn, Jimmy Clausen. I mean, statistically, but let's see what he does at Notre Dame first. I hope he's the best quarterback since 2009. Jimmy, if Sam Hartman is anything like Jimmy Clausen was in 2009, this offense is going to be really freaking good.
Yes, they are.
I mean, really freaking good, Vince. So I hope he's that good.
I hope he is too. I mean, but we haven't seen it yet. Like we've seen practice. We saw spring. We saw a little bit in the fall, but you don't make your legacy in Notre Dame in practice.
Yeah, I think he can be, Vince. It's just like I'm not ready to say he's the best since so and so. I mean,
right.
If he completes 68% of his passes and throws for 3,700 yards in only 12 games like Jimmy did that year, yeah, This team's going to be really flipping good. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. If Notre Dame would have played in a bowl game that year, Jimmy would have had 4,000 yards. He averaged 310 yards a game.
This is my last year sitting in the press box, Brian. It's going to be a good one. So
I didn't say that was definitely going to be the case.
With you too. Beezer 12 Washingbeard. You are now the NCAA commissioner. Congratulations. What's the first thing that you'd change?
I would
in my office.
There'd be a one bigger picture thing NCAA wise, and then there'd be another thing I would do for football. The first thing I would do is just completely rebrand the NCAA and make sure that we get back to being an institution that cares first and foremost about the well-being of student athletes. First and foremost, that is our number one priority. Not we give lip service to it, but that's actually our number one priority. From a football standpoint, I would hire incredible lawyers. And I would say, because see, he asked me if I was the NCAA commissioner, not if I was the king of football.
That's true.
If I was the NCAA commissioner, there are laws on the books or Supreme Court cases that have allowed for conferences to negotiate their own TV contracts. And to me, the minute that happened, it became it was like the wound was created that was eventually going to lead to the NCAA's death, because then it became all about the money, the TV money. TV money has completely ruined so much of what I loved about college sports, as along with the NCAA's own greed. Part of the issue that they did that is because the NCAA's own greed. If the NCAA would have done a better job of being stewards of the game and of things like that, it might have gone better. But so my goal would be is get lawyers to basically sue, negotiate, whatever I have to do to create a situation where if you're going to be part of the NCAA, you have to understand that we're going to have all your TV stuff is going to go through us, because I would want to create a rev share. Now I would have a 2-tiered rev share. I'd have rev share for my Power 5, which for me would grow. I would add some teams to the Power 5, Fresno, San Diego State, some teams like that. And then I'd have a group of 5. And essentially, however many games you want, that's what you're paying for. Like I would come to, hey, this is how much all these deals are worth, and this is kind of how much it is. So if you want to have SEC games, cool, you can offer this amount of money and then you get SEC games, but that's going into the main Power 5 pot. And we're going to have a TV revenue share. And then that's going to then hopefully lead back to the reinstitution of the conferences to what they used to be. Because like
conferences that make sense.
NCAA has no say on what conference you're in.
Sure.
That's the thing, is like, so being NCAA commissioner, I'm very limited on what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So like, to me, that's the big thing I can try to fight in order to get back to it. Now that has to come after my original stated goal of we're getting back to doing things that are more student athlete oriented. That is our priority. Because I do believe that the current system, we've talked about this with volleyball team at USC having to fly. Some guy put on Twitter yesterday, the closest school to USC and UCLA is Nebraska, which is over 1,500 miles away.
Good Lord.
From USC. That's stupid.
That's ridiculous.
And so, you know, the volleyball team, the field hockey team, the soccer team, they all got to make those trips. It's just
so in the middle of the week, by the way, because soccer doesn't just happen on, for example, soccer doesn't just happen on the weekends. It happens on a Tuesday or whatever.
The only really weekend sport that I know.
Correct. So like you're going to be going literally across the country on a Tuesday night, or teams are going to have to come to you. 3-hour time difference, by the way, if you're going to go play the Rutgers volleyball team. So you got a 3-hour time difference, and that's cool to do on a Tuesday. I mean, I realize not all schools take academics super seriously, but come on, man. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. The flight from LA to New Jersey on average is over 6 hours.
Right. That's a third of your day.
And you're losing 3 hours. Right? Because you're going from west to east.
Yes. I mean, that's a third of the day that you're awake, I should say. You know what I mean? Like that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Brandon Plensner, what's the staff's infatuation with Derek Meadows? Because they saw him in person, or what do you see?
Well, I mean, seeing him in person is what allowed them to see the things that they're infatuated with. And they're infatuated with the fact that this kid is like 6'5". He's an explosive athlete. He is legitimately a 4.5 flat athlete. And when I say 4.5, I'm talking about on the electronic type of stuff. I mean, he is a burner at that size. And they know that the catching has to get better, but he's just got so many of those things that I can work with a kid and make him a better pass catcher, Vince. But look, at his speed, he's not going to be making a lot of contested catches.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
How many contested catches does Will Fuller have to make in his career? You know what I mean? Like,
good point.
If I'm 3 yards past you, I don't got to make a contested catch. They just see tons of potential, man. I mean, and I get it. I'm the kid's very raw, but he is physically 6'5", fast, can jump, long arms. There's a lot to like. It's just you realize you're taking a bit of a chance because he's got to catch the ball better, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Jay Henry, I saw a clip of Ivan Taylor one-on-one with Micah Gilbert. Do you think he has some, quote, big nickel potential in addition to safety?
Smitty and I were talking about this. In certain defenses, he could play corner. He could play corner in like Clark Lee's defense, like the way Julian Love did. He could play corner in Bob Diaco's defense. He's not an NFL corner, and he's not a corner in Notre Dame's defense, really, in my opinion. I'd give him a shot there, but definitely could see him being a big nickel and being a cover guy. 100% could see that. Absolutely could see that. I like that, Jay. And I think the thing, too, is that would also give you the flexibility that if, depending on who else you have at safety, that you can kind of do some rolling in a very similar way. Like you could use him in a very similar way to the way Oklahoma State used Thomas Harper last year, where he plays at nickel, but then also within the nickel package, sometimes you'll drop him back and he can play over the top. There's a lot of different things you can do. So yeah, I think, Jay, absolutely that's something that adds value to what Ivan Taylor brings to the table. Yeah, very good observation.
Ryan Hagan, with the acquisition of all the explosive offensive talent in recent classes, are you confident that Parker will utilize that talent better than Tommy Rees did during his tenure as offensive coordinator? Thanks, guys. Remains to be seen. Hopefully, yes.
I mean, we're still kind of turning this into like this is all Tommy Rees
versus thing. Yeah, 1v1 here. Yeah.
I don't think all the issues at Notre Dame under Tommy Rees were because of Tommy Rees.
A solid point.
I think part of it was Brian Kelly. Part of it was, Brian Kelly loved Ian Book, and that was going to be his guy. And there were always going to be limitations to what you could do in Book. But, look, here's what I know. Tommy Rees's first 3 years as a coordinator at Notre Dame, first 2 years at Notre Dame as a coordinator, they went to the playoff. They went 11-2. I mean, he wasn't terrible. Right. Were there things he could have done better? Sure. Will Jared Parker do better than he did? I have no idea. I hope so, because I did have some issues with Coach Rees with certain things. I did. I mean, the lack of willingness to use RPOs drove me nuts. I would have done that. There was other, the last year, the look at me thing, right? Check with me thing. Like, come on now. Like we're this need to always be in a perfect play. But part of the reason he felt the need to be in the perfect play was because of what he had at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't have a guy that can necessarily do this or do that. So
there's a reason, though, he also went out to get Sam Hartman. Remember,
because
Tommy Rees brought in Sam Hartman.
Right.
Tommy Rees also brought in CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie.
But even if you accept the premise that he didn't maximize the talent, I don't know that Coach Parker's going to be able to do that. Because here's the thing, based on this premise, the offense being better under Jared Parker with better talent, and I do think it's going to have better talent, which Tommy Rees partly played a role in, that doesn't mean he's maximizing the talent any better or utilizing the talent any better. It's just I have better players, so my numbers are better.
Right.
Even though he's not maximizing it. I don't know what more Notre Dame could have done in 2020 offensively. And that's the other thing about Tommy Rees's offense is that weird COVID stuff went on in 2020.
Sure.
It just Notre Dame's got to do a better job of utilizing its talent on offense, Vince. I think that's the thing I will say. Whoever's fault it was, or whatever the reasons why, whether it was understandable because of personnel or because coaches were stubborn or hard-headed or whatever, Yeah, Notre Dame has to start maximizing the talent that they have better and bringing in better players. I will say that. It's like the quarterback recruiting. Tom Reed's terrible recruiting quarterbacks. Well, all I know is the minute Brian Kelly was fired,
quarterback Notre Dame recruiting shot through the roof.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest. It did.
It's not a coincidence.
Right.
I'm just going to keep telling you all that. It's not a coincidence.
Right.
So we can blame whoever we want to blame for that. But now y'all see what we were talking about with that. Mm-hmm. This is the last one, Vince. We're going to end on this one.
All right. Coach Cock says, if the O-line plays as well as you think they can, how many get drafted? And guesses, well, you can't, as where they go. Like, that's impossible to guess.
Like range-wise. I mean, range-wise.
Oh, I was going to say, they're going to the Packers. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, I think if they play as well as they can, you've got 3 potential first-round picks on your starting lineup in Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, and Billy Schrauth. Now, Billy Schrauth is a down-the-road first-round draft pick.
Right.
The nature of his position is probably second half of the first round if he maximizes out. Joe Smith is the top 10. Blake Fisher, to me, is right now the best we've seen of him is more late first round is his max. I don't know that he's got top first-round potential with the smaller body. I need to see that first. You know what I mean, Vince? Like, I need, like, in my practice report today, I said, look, Blake is moving really well, Vince. Mm-hmm. I mean, you saw what I saw.
He was literally right in front of me. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's
3 feet
he's
away.
Moving. His feet are so much quicker. But can he move people? That's the question. Now, if Blake doesn't lose strength with the less weight, then yes, vault him into the top half of the first round.
Sure.
Potentially. Is it 2024? No. Blake, to me, needs to come back for a year.
Agreed.
And then be that guy.
Unless he just happens to end up being like a mauler all year long. I mean, which he's going to get a lot of love or he's going to get a lot of looks because Joe Alt's on the other side of the line.
Right.
So a lot of NFL teams are going to watch Notre Dame film because they're watching for Joe Alt and they're going to see Fisher. So there's a chance that he could vault up, but he's going to have one hell of a season. I agree with you. I think he needs to come back for another year.
Yep. So then you look at Billy Schrauth again, late first, day 2, round 2 potential. Then you look at Rocco and Zeke Correll, and they're more day 3 guys. Zeke just because of his size more so, but I've got to tell you, man, I've been impressed by his footwork this fall camp, his leadership, Vince. I mean, he talks almost as much as Joe Rudolph.
Yep.
Which I liked, and being hyperbolic there, but yes, he's
very. I know exactly what you're saying.
Playing with, I mean, he just seems to have a lot more pop when he in drills this year than he did last year. That's a positive, but he's the center, which isn't an incredibly high valued position. The way you'd think it would be, but from a draft standpoint. So day 3 guy, Rocco, same thing. Rocco just doesn't have the foot speed, right? Even now with the improvements, he doesn't have the foot speed to be a day 1. Early day 2 pick. I mean,
he's an interior guy, right? Yeah. Because a lot of guards and centers aren't going to go in the first round most of the time. I mean, you get your one-offs like a Quentin Nelson, that kind of a thing. Sure. But most of the time it's tackles. And so that's to be expected, I would say. Because those guys aren't generational guards and centers and things like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think you need to be generational. I mean, we've seen guys like Ryan Kelly and guys like that. But yes, to go in the top half for sure.
Right.
But you've got to be really good.
Yes.
Really good to be a first-round guard or center.
Sure.
In my opinion. And like you said, Vince, there might be I think there was 1 year. There was 1 year recently where there was 2 centers taken in the first round. But other than that, man, it doesn't happen a whole lot, right? So let's just go centers and guards to back up your point. Last year, there were 0 centers taken in round 1. The year before that, there was 1. None the year before that. 1 in 2020, 1 in 2019, 2 in 2018.
Oh, big year.
None in 2017, 1 in 2016, 1 in 2015, none in 14, 1 in 13. In 2013, there were only 5 centers period drafted, and they were the same as the year before. And so you just don't see it a ton. You look at guard. 1 guard taken in the first round last year, and he played tackle in college, Peter Skoronski, which some people don't even view as a guard. If you view Peter Skoronski as a tackle, which I believe the Titans do, I could be wrong on that, then none were. There were 3 the year before.
Wow.
There was 2 the year bore that. again, one of those guys that was taken the year before was a tackle in college.
Yeah.
Right. Rashawn Slater, who here is listed as a guard, played tackle in college. Won the year before that. Won the year before that. Won the year before that. None the year before that. 2 the year before that, including one who played tackle. 3 the year before that. Again, 2 of those guys that are listed here as guards were tackles in college.
Right.
So, to your point, Vince, right? I may disagree with the generational aspect of it. The reality is it's not a lot. You've got to be the best of the best at guard to be a first-round draft pick.
You've got to be the number 1 or number 2 guard coming out.
Right.
I mean, and a lot of times, like you said, some of those guys are tackles that are moving inside just because of the next level type stuff. Right. So,
correct.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it, man. It's going to get us out of here.
Well, we had a fun one today. Talked about the 25 class. We had an awesome interview with Justin Thurman, the new commitment to the 25 class running back out of Florida. And then we got into the mailbag. So thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share with your family and friends. Boards.irishbreakdown.com, people. If you want the inside scoop, that's where you need to be. We are revving up with the preseason stuff, guys. So the intel is going to keep on coming. We've got practice on Saturday, Monday, Tuesday. It's going to be rolling, and we only have one more full practice. So if you want the intel,
fun stuff on the boards this year during game weeks as well, too. So
there you go. So get on the boards, guys. We're a couple away from our goal, our preseason goal. So jump on there. Let's have some fun. We have a lot of fun on the boards, and I check it every day and always reading the intel. So make sure you check it out. And then, of course, check out our merch store. There's all kinds of good stuff on there. Somebody got one of the distressed IB hats. I might have to get one of those. I'm not sure. Yeah. That looks like a good one. So there's all kinds of good stuff on the merch store. So make sure you check that out as well. But
and we've had actually 4 people sign up since we started the show.
See,
and someone bought from the merch store. So there you go.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, come on back in about an hour and 50 minutes because IB Nation Sports Talk is coming. And Sean and I are going to do a practice recap.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to jump into some rapid fire. So lots of fun tonight as well. So for Brian, I'm Vince. We will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. But you can't stop it. You can't stop it.